Good Friday. It's always a good Friday here at the Voice of College Football, but I mean capital letters, exclamation marks, underlined a million times in bright, bold letters, Good Friday. And if you don't know what I'm talking about or you don't know the meaning, please do yourself a enormous favor and look up Good Friday. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. My apologies. I'm sorry I'm about 20 minutes late. So we did back-to-back shows with Oregon, Miami, and now the call-in show. And those Miami folks are just too good to me. So this is a lesson for the future. If you want to keep me on a live stream or a call-in show, throw money, because that's what happened at the end of the Miami show, is that we had so many super chats coming in. And I say it every so often, and I only say it because it's the truth. I can't get around the truth, and we know that we're all about the truth and about facts here at the Voice of College Football. But as a collective fan base, you know, Ohio State fans, I love you. Michigan fans, I love you. I could go on down the line because, of course, Ohio State and Michigan fans, I believe that's our largest contingent here. But we've got Florida fans. I just had an LSU fan write me and a Texas A&M fan. We've got our Oregon State fans headed up by Connor, and our West Coast fans with Tim at USC and Eric at Oregon, and all over the place to Real MVP, repping those Kentucky fans along with Kevin McGuffey. And yes, fan bases all over the place here for the Voice of College Football. So I love and appreciate all of you. But my goodness, that Miami fan base, they show up, and they show up with their wallets. And as long as they're throwing money out there for Super Chats, I've got to read off the Super Chats, and we've got to answer questions. So again, 20 minutes late. Thank you so much for being here at the Voice of College Football. All right. We are starting a series tonight in which, and hopefully this will at some point merge with another project I'm working on that will remain undercover at this point because it's not yet ready to be unveiled. But another project I'm working on as we look through the years of national champions, would-be national champions, contending teams for national championships, and the various formats that we have undergone throughout the history of college football. So for this particular show, we are reviewing the years 2010 through 2021, the college football national championship race. Who won? Who possibly got snubbed? Who possibly could have made a BCS championship game or a college football playoff that might have factored into a national championship conclusion? And of course, out of those teams that won national championships, did they all earn the national championship? You will get my answer to that question, but also who may also could have earned a national championship in addition to those teams that did play for the national championship. All right. We're going to run through the years, and we're going to take your calls here at the Voice of College Football. Want to remind everyone that we've got our Amazon link. It's in the description section of all the videos. Go to the description section of any video. And I know you're not shopping on Amazon right this second because you're looking at my face, fill in the blank face, and you're locked in on college football, but you're going to be shopping Amazon here soon. Many of you, most of you, half the country shops on Amazon. That's crazy. 160 million people shop on Amazon every month. So please grab the link in the description section because you can help yourself out. Ultimately, if you love college football talk, we're going to stay here partially because of your contribution, which comes through one of many ways. One is the Amazon link that you use to access Amazon. Ferris uses the Amazon link. That is all the promotional material I need right there. Ferris uses the Amazon link. Thank you for that, Ferris. I appreciate the consideration, because understand that when I ask you guys to hit the like button, share the videos, do all those things, use the Amazon link, I have just started. I understand those people that have watched a million of my videos and live streams and they've only hit the like button 3 times. I don't like that, but I understand it because for a long, long time, I would watch people that I watch. There are a collection of people that I love watching on YouTube, and probably none of you know who these people are. And I didn't for a long time think to hit the like button. And if they didn't ask for it, I didn't think to hit the like button, didn't think that it mattered, didn't think about it. Now, because of what I do and because of how important it is, I not only hit the like button on all the videos I do, in fact, like, I also grab those links. You'll see them on Twitter sometimes. I'll be promoting some of my favorite YouTube channels on Twitter or on Facebook. And you're going to hear more about where we are in regards to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We got wiped out on both Facebook and Instagram almost 2 years ago. It was in June. We got wiped out on Instagram and Facebook. And so we've had to start back up on Facebook and Instagram. So it wasn't like we had these mammoth followings, but I had about 2,000 followers on Instagram, even though I wasn't doing much there. And boom, shot down to 0, started back up. We're at about 33 on Instagram. But you can join us on Instagram, Voice of College Football, Voice of CFB on Instagram, also on Facebook as well. So please do that. But we're going to get down to the college football talk. But again, yes, Amazon. Thank you for that, Ferris. That is much appreciated. That goes a long way because somebody's going to get the money. Think of it this way. You buy a whatever for $100. Amazon's going to get all the money. Or maybe you send out of that $100 that's coming out of your pocket anyway. It's $100 to you regardless. Amazon gets 98. Voice of College Football gets 2. How about that? So thank you so much for that. Right now, we're running about $25 a month that we get from Amazon because of you. It comes from you, but through Amazon. So thank you for that. But be great if 25 became 250, that became 2,500. Chuck C, thank you so much for the contribution. Appreciate that so much. And we'll get to your super chat contribution in just a second. Patreon, Mark Rogers TV. We've got a Discord. Go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. We got a Discord where consider this live chat that's going on right now. You're talking college football with all your friends, everybody that you've met through YouTube and hopefully through this channel. I feel good about that many of you have become friends online because of our channel here. Well, you can go to Discord and talk college football 24/7, 365 with guys like Eric and Tim and others. So just go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. I get you the link and you're on Discord. Okay, let's get to the football. But before we do, thank you so much for that, Chuck C. Mark, another one from the Canes. Yes. It's I don't know what it is. I don't know if Miami fans are. I won't say anything. Thank you for all you do as well, Chuck. Thank you for that. I missed most of the last show with Wholesome One, so making up for some time now for this subject, check, quote, ranked team beat downs given by the 0-1 Canes. Good start. All right. In terms of the 2001 Miami team, they will be part of our next live stream. So we're taking the decade of the teens in the 2000s, going through all the national championship seasons. We're going to go decade by decade by decade, and we're going to take your calls. Always want to know your feedback. Always. Let me catch up with a few more comments here before we run through each season. Falconer X. This man is the master of the super sticker, and I got to tell you, he also throws out some tremendous one-liners. He will pick up on what we're talking about in the conversation. And for example, in the last live stream, the Miami live stream, just a few minutes ago, we were talking about Florida State and others copying off of Miami and how important it is to be authentic versus being a copycat. So Falconer X throws up the super chat and it says Adidas's new slogan, just do it. That's not even his best work, but that's the latest. Falconer X, thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. And also, don't want to miss another super sticker coming in. Exploring with Ben. Exploring with Ben has been a faithful and loyal viewer here recently. Thank you so much for that. All right. Let's go through national championship seasons. I'm going to be brief. I know that we did the coaches the other night, and I had so much to say about each coach going through 65 coaches that it was a while before we would hit the phone lines. Well, I've only got 10 seasons, and I'll be brief, but we are going to run through these if I can figure out which. There it is. I got so many folders in StreamYard. Let's start with the most recent college football season. This is what the season looked like in regards to contenders at the conclusion of 2021 after the conference championship game. Cincinnati, the only undefeated team in college football, 13-0, regardless of what you think of their competition. Bama won the SEC. Michigan won the Big Ten. Notre Dame, of course, had the big loss to Cincinnati as a independent. Pitt won the ACC. And yes, I'm including the ACC and the Big 12 champions, even with 2 losses as possible contenders. Just bear with me here. Ole Miss, Ohio State as well, right there. So I think very few people, if any, had an issue with the selection of the college football playoff teams of 4. Alabama, the 1 seed, is the SEC champion. Michigan, the 2 seed, is the Big Ten champion. Georgia is the 3 seed, losing the SEC championship game, but having that 12-1 record and the dominant season. And then Cincinnati with the 4 seed after defeating Houston and winning the American Conference. The only issue I believe that anyone had was that Cincinnati did not play a good schedule. They play in the American Conference. The best teams they played were Houston, Memphis, Tulsa, but they beat Notre Dame. That was enormous. That obviously pushed them over the top. And so that was pretty much the thought on Cincinnati. Since they scheduled Notre Dame, an 11-1 football team, and defeated Notre Dame, Cincinnati earned that 4th spot. So I have no issue with the national championship race, nor the selections of the 4. I do believe that teams like Ohio State, Baylor is a Big 12 champion, and Ole Miss were better teams in 2021 than Cincinnati, but Cincinnati earned it as a conference champion, an undefeated team with a win against Notre Dame. Okay, 2020, Alabama probably proved to be the most dominant team for that particular season that we've seen since, I don't know when. Gonna have to think about that. 1995, Nebraska comes to mind. Alabama was challenged by Ole Miss. They were challenged by Florida to a certain extent, but Alabama 11-0 at the conclusion of the SEC championship game. Cincinnati was the only other undefeated team, along with Ohio State, but with the 9 games played, this obviously was a very odd season, the COVID year. Cincinnati would go on to the Peach Bowl and lose to Georgia on a last-second field goal, but Cincinnati had a claim. So the teams that made the playoff, of course, Alabama is the SEC champion, Ohio State is the undefeated Big Ten champion, Clemson with 1 loss, but avenging that loss in the ACC championship game, and a questionable call here in the 4th spot. Notre Dame got the nod. They lost the ACC championship game by 24 points. First of all, they did not belong in the ACC, so it's completely bogus. I don't use that word very often, but it is completely bogus that there was a team that was allowed to enter a conference for 1 season. It's one thing when there is conference expansion and contraction, and that changes the configuration of the conference, the membership of the conference. The Big 12 is losing 2 to the SEC, but those are permanent changes. Those are contracts signed for perpetuity, onward. The Big 12 is adding 4 from the American Conference and BYU. Those are additions that are set, not this agreement that join us for one season. So Notre Dame's inclusion in the ACC, to me, was invalid and illegitimate. So Notre Dame gets the playoff spot. Did they deserve it? I was okay with the selection. I do believe that Texas A&M had just as good a season as Notre Dame. And Oklahoma, I placed them there as well with 2 losses because they won the Big 12 championship. They're a conference champion. Those were my 4 as well, but Cincinnati had a claim, Texas A&M had a claim, and Oklahoma had a claim, in my judgment, for the 4th spot. I'm not saying that they should have been selected, but I'm saying that they had a claim. All right. 2019, the top 3 teams in college football were by far LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson as undefeated 13-0 teams following championship weekend. That's how they were seeded: 1, 2, and 3. Tigers, Buckeyes, and Tigers. Oklahoma was the 4th seed at 12-1. They earned the spot based on a conference championship with only 1 loss. I add those other teams because Memphis did win the American Conference at 12-1 with the same record as Oklahoma, but obviously a much lesser schedule. Oregon lost late in the season to tack on a 2nd loss. Georgia obviously did not win the SEC, and Alabama, wow. I think when all was said and done, that Alabama showed that they were one of the top 4 teams in the country. But at the conclusion of the regular season and the conference championship games, it was pretty clear cut. LSU, Ohio State, Clemson clearly earned it. Oklahoma would be the de facto 4th team because of the conference championship and only 1 loss, even though in the eyes of many, including myself, there were other better teams, i.e. Alabama. 2018, Alabama and Clemson were the 2 dominant teams at 13-0. The other 2 selected were Notre Dame and Oklahoma. Okay, we had 2 issues this year of 2018. Number 1, that UCF went 12-0. So Cincinnati made it. Why not UCF? Cincinnati had the Notre Dame win. UCF had a win, I believe, that season against Pitt and possibly Georgia Tech. UCF backed it up after the playoff selections with a win against Auburn in the Peach Bowl. And there is also a difficult distinction to be made between Oklahoma and Ohio State. Oklahoma had the more reasonable loss against a good Texas team, while Ohio State got drubbed against Purdue. On the other hand, the Buckeyes had more impressive wins than Oklahoma. So this is where the college football playoff failed us. Notre Dame should be in a conference. Notre Dame would have been, had they been in the ACC like they would be 2 years later. Ironically, had we known this in 2018, we would have really railed against Notre Dame. Had we known 2 years later Notre Dame's going to be in the ACC for 1 season, well, if they were in the ACC this season of 2018, then we would not have had to decide between Oklahoma and Ohio State, because Notre Dame would have played Clemson in the ACC championship game. The winner of that game would have made the playoff. The loser would have been out. Most likely Notre Dame out, as they, of course, played Clemson in the semifinal game of the playoff. And I sat there watching that game, Clemson-Notre Dame, thinking Oklahoma and Ohio State should have both been in the playoff. Clemson-Notre Dame should have been an ACC championship game. Okay, that's what flawed that season. UCF went undefeated, didn't get a chance. Ohio State and Oklahoma should have both been included. Notre Dame should have been playing in a conference championship game. 2018 was screwed up from all those different factors. The only thing that ruled out was that Alabama and Clemson appeared to be the teams, and they proved it, and they marched through. And then, of course, Clemson won the national championship over Bama by 4 touchdowns. I apologize for the noise there, but I had a call coming in. And I will turn the phone off. Okay, back to 2017. UCF was the only undefeated team in college football in 2017. They, of course, did not get selected in 2017. Clemson was the 1 seed, Oklahoma the 2, Georgia the 3, and Wisconsin, well, Alabama was the 4. So we've got more issues here. Number one is that UCF, unlike Cincinnati last season, did not receive an invitation. And I apologize. I had mentioned that in 2018, UCF beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl. That was obviously in 2017. In 2018, UCF played LSU and lost to Joe Burrow and company 40-32. Okay. And I'm sure people corrected me in the chat, even though I can't see the chat right now. I can only see my graphics or the chat. All right. Clemson the 1, OU the 2, UGA the 3, Bama the 4. Of course, Bama was the controversial pick. They lost the Iron Bowl, did not go to the SEC championship game, were 11-1. They validated themselves by winning the 2 playoff games over Clemson, then Georgia to win the national championship. Ohio State is placed on there despite the 11-2 record because they were the Big Ten champions. Wisconsin lost the Big Ten championship game. Otherwise, consider this, Alabama fans, thank Ohio State. Had Wisconsin won the Big Ten championship game at 13-0, they would have been in the playoff, may have vaulted to the 1 seed, and Alabama would have been out. Our issues with this particular lineup is that UCF was undefeated, and unlike Cincinnati of last season, not given the opportunity. Number 2 would be that Alabama received a bid at 11-1, even though they did not play in a conference championship game. Wisconsin was exposed to a conference championship game and lost. Alabama benefited from not playing in the SEC championship game. That's backward. That makes no sense. A team benefited from not playing in its conference championship game. Alabama loses its last regular season game, still makes the playoff. So Wisconsin, had they been in the same situation as Alabama, for whatever reason, 12-0, did not reach its conference championship game, they would have been protected at 12-0. But they had to play Ohio State. They lost 27-21, and therefore it was Clemson, Oklahoma, Georgia, Wisconsin, or Alabama. I set up all these panels to go by record in order. UCF ripped off an opportunity. Wisconsin had the same, I won't say the same resume as Alabama. They did not. But on the surface, same record, 1 game better, no conference championship, played in a conference championship game. Ohio State had the Big Ten championship that some would argue trump the Alabama 11-1 record because we had a similar situation the year before. Western Michigan under PJ Fleck went 13-0. Just had to put them on there. Nobody's going to argue that they played a good enough schedule to be selected for the playoffs. But playing major college football as an undefeated group of 5 team, I placed all those teams on these graphics. Bama was the 1, Clemson the 2, Ohio State the 3, Washington the 4. I put the Huskies first because they won the Pac-12 and the conference championship game to go to 12-1. Of course, the controversy here was that Ohio State, as a non-champion, was selected over Penn State that won the Big Ten title at 11-2. On the side of Penn State was a Big Ten championship and a win over the Buckeyes in Happy Valley. On the side of Ohio State was better record, 11-1 versus 11-2, and a stronger schedule by way of going to Oklahoma, beating the Big 12 champion, and going to Wisconsin to beat the Western Division champion in the Big Ten. And then you also have 10-2 Oklahoma. So, as stated that week, for those of you who were with me during 2016, I went on a rant in favor of Penn State being selected for the playoffs instead of Ohio State. To 2015, Clemson the 1, Bama the 2, Michigan State the 3, and Clemson the 1, Alabama the 2, Michigan State the 3, Oklahoma the 4. I included Iowa as a one-loss conference championship game loser. Ohio State, considered by many to be one of the best teams in the country, lost to Michigan State, therefore lost the division, did not go to the conference championship game. Houston finished the regular season 11-1, then marched on to the Peach Bowl and whipped a top 10 Florida State team, so they're included as well. I see no issues with the selections there. I think the selections were made correctly. It was based on record, then based on conference championship affiliation. But Ohio State was one of the top 4 teams. They just were. But they did not earn a playoff spot. 2014, the very first year of the playoff, Florida State in at 13-0, and then comes the controversy. For some reason, the controversy involved Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor. Why it did not include Alabama and Oregon, I have no idea. Well, actually, I do have an idea. You know why? Because Alabama and Oregon started the season as playoff contenders. It was the mindset of the pollsters that Alabama and Oregon were 2 of the top 3 or 4 teams in the country. Therefore, when they lost games, they weren't docked in the similar fashion that Ohio State was. Ohio State had just as good a resume as Alabama and Oregon did as a Big Ten champion at 12-1 and a 59-0 win over Wisconsin, a top 10 team in the country at the time. The controversy also ensued, of course, TCU and Baylor. There was no Big 12 championship game. The Big 12 botched that because they called them co-champions. So if you've got co-champions, especially considering this was the first year of the playoff and the playoff committee was adamant about conference championships meaning a ton. Well, the Big 12 didn't have a champion because they didn't come up with a determining criteria, which should have obviously been head-to-head. That would have favored Baylor. I have no issue with the way the teams were selected, but I do think that TCU and Baylor as conference champions with 1 loss were ripped off. But there was no room for them. So Florida State, Ohio State, Alabama, Oregon marched on to the playoff. In 2013, so no playoff, BCS championship game. This was the last one. Florida State, the only undefeated team in college football, obviously earned a spot. Who gets the second spot? Well, Auburn was voted and selected by the computers. The combination of the computers and the polls went to Auburn. Michigan State got left out, more so than Baylor. Baylor did not play a conference championship game. Michigan State lost a close game to Notre Dame early in the season. Auburn's loss was by 2 touchdowns to LSU. So Michigan State, in my opinion, can throw up its hands and say, why not us? I'm not saying that Michigan State should have been selected over Auburn. I'm saying that the system sucked. The BCS was garbage and did not create a healthy and reasonable playoff situation so teams could compete for a national championship, there should have been at least a 4-team playoff that would have involved both Michigan State and Baylor. In 2012, odd season here again, Notre Dame went undefeated, did not play in a conference championship game. And at this point, all the conferences had conference championship games. Ohio State was ineligible at 12-0, and so they were clearly the best team in the Big Ten. Wisconsin, figure this, Wisconsin won the Big Ten championship game, went to the Rose Bowl, finished 8-6. So Ohio State was the best team in the Big Ten. Ohio State's athletic director, Gene Smith, made a horrible judgment call the previous season, wanting to go to a bowl game in which Ohio State was a 6-6 team. Should have been able to easily forecast that Urban Meyer's taking over the team. Maybe we would want to go to postseason play the next year. So the national championship game would have been Notre Dame and Ohio State as the only two undefeated teams. We know that the Buckeyes were ineligible. That opened the door for Alabama at 11-1. Oregon was also 11-1. However, in 2012, the Ducks lost in overtime to Stanford. That's how close it was for Oregon to reach the national championship game as an undefeated team against Notre Dame, but they lost to Stanford. Therefore, they did not even win the Pac-12 North to get to the championship game. But as we've seen in other playoff years, 11-1 teams with no division championships get to play for the national championship. Not in 2012. 2011, LSU put together one of the great regular seasons in the history of college football. Look it up. Of course, Alabama was chosen despite a non-conference winning team or division winning team to play in the national title game in a rematch against LSU. I believe that Oklahoma State should have been given that opportunity. Stanford is also listed at 11-1, but much like the next season, where even though Stanford was 11-1, they lost the game to Oregon. Therefore, they did not win their own division, even at 11-1. So LSU, Oklahoma State would have been my selection. And although I believed, much like in 2015, Ohio State was one of the four best teams, the two best teams in the country, LSU, Alabama, and the Tide, of course, won the title game by 21 points. And all the way back to 2010, in our final game of the decade, season of the decade, Auburn and Oregon were the clear Power 5 teams as undefeated teams, conference champions, to meet in the BCS championship game. We note the TCU against a pretty good schedule, but nothing close to Auburn or Oregon. They went to the Rose Bowl. They beat Wisconsin. That was an 11-1 Big Ten champion. This was 1 year prior to the Big Ten championship game, so there was a tie for the Big Ten championship between Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Michigan State, all 11-1. The BCS got it right. Couldn't help but get it right. They were the only two Power Fives undefeated, 13-0 and 12-0. All right, we are going to fire up the phone lines and hear from all of you. And to do that here at the Voice of College Football and hear what you have to say. I'll dive into the comments and get the phone calls and the comments at the same time. While we're firing up the phone, let's check out the comments. 206 comments, all in all. And Joey, thank you so much for the super chat. Still 7-5, or is it 9-3 now, Mark? Go Mountaineers. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what that means. But hey, we'll take the super chat contribution even when they are unexplainable. Exploring with Ben, thank you so much for that. Appreciate that.
you for calling Collins Studios. Enter your 6-digit PIN number. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the
Okay, we'll take your
Studio
calls,
web
folks.
interface.
I'll get the number up here in a second. 860-499-3332. Somebody did send me a helmet here in the last couple of days. I got to go pick it up. So, Exploring with Ben, that might be you. Call number 1 coming in. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, Mark. It's the real MVP. How you doing this evening?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We're only a few hours away from Good Friday, so that's always a great time of year.
Absolutely, it is. I am still trying to figure out why you're not connected. That's odd. You are not connected to my Wi-Fi, even though it shows that you are. How odd is that? So, but I'm not here. You're not coming through the. Well, all I can say is call back. Let me shut this down and try it again because I got no other reason. Okay. Don't know what happened there. It's the only issue that we have is typically that it's not connected, but it is connected.
Thank you for calling Collins Studios host and call screener line. Please enter your show or meeting number and press
Why is that not connecting to?
You did not enter a number. Goodbye.
I don't know why that's not connecting.
Thank you for calling Collins Studios. Enter your 6-digit PIN number. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Collins.
No, it's still not. Well, am I going to have to hold the phone up to the mic the entire night? Why is this not connecting? Let's do this.
speaking.
There we go. Okay, I think we're all set now. All right. Finally,
Let me give it a minute.
Here we go. The real MVP. Go to it.
Well, Mark, the thing I'll say is you were asked why did UCF not make the playoffs, but Cincinnati did, and the obvious thing is UCF beat a 7-7 Pitt team and then a 4-8 Maryland team.
Oh, I know why.
Win.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, is there? Well, I mean, I don't think a team that beat a 7-7 Pitt team should make the playoffs.
So this is what's wrong with college football. You have to hope that the teams on your schedule are good.
Yes.
Like UCF has no control over how good the teams are. They went out and actually they scheduled, just like Cincinnati, they scheduled 2 Power 5 teams. And they beat them.
And it's weird because Cincinnati got all the credit for scheduling Notre Dame, but that was like 8 years in the future.
Yeah.
And Cincinnati had no idea they were going to be that good. And they got credit for scheduling Indiana when the only time Indiana was good was in 2020.
Yeah, Cincinnati, I looked it up when they scheduled those games. Yeah, they were something in the 8-year range. Cincinnati had no thoughts of going to a college football playoff at that point. They were just wanting to make some money.
Neither did Notre Dame or Indiana.
Well, Notre Dame did.
Well, I meant for Cincinnati making the playoffs. They thought it'd be a cupcake on their schedule.
Yeah, gotcha.
So that's the first thing. And then what year did Auburn have? I think it was 2013 where Auburn had like that magical run.
Yes.
It was 2013 with the kick six and then the Georgia player tipping the ball and ends up in an Auburn player's hand and scores a touchdown.
Yep.
That year, I don't think they should have made it just because too many weird things happened for them. They weren't convincing enough to make it compared to, I think it was Michigan State.
Yes.
And Michigan State should have made it in.
Okay. You would go for Michigan State in 2013. Okay. I get it.
Yep. And that's all I really have about in terms of those teams, the playoffs, in terms of getting it wrong over the last decade. I see the argument last year with having Texas A&M in it instead of Notre Dame, but Texas A&M played Alabama that year and got absolutely destroyed anyway. I didn't see anywhere in that game where it could have been any different. So, I mean, we all knew Notre Dame was probably going to lose that game, but at least they were a different team.
Okay. Yeah, I get. I don't have an issue with Notre Dame being selected. I'm just making a case for Cincinnati, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M warranting selection as well. That they had just as much of a claim as Notre Dame did. If anything, they had more of a claim. Again, it brings to light when you go through the years, and especially the way we did them, we went backwards, that if we would have known in 2018, Clemson and Notre Dame are playing in a college football playoff game. Notre Dame's playing this ACC schedule, but they're not in the ACC, and they're going to the playoff. And this is eliminating either Ohio State or Oklahoma, who have to play in conference championship games. That scenario was bad enough at the time. I railed on it. But had we known 2 years from now, Notre Dame is going to be playing in the ACC championship game against Clemson, how more ridiculous does that make Notre Dame's situation in 2018 and make it illegitimate? And illegitimate that they were playing in the ACC championship game one time.
Right. Well, Notre Dame gets to play Clemson this year as well. That game will probably very much have playoff implications involved.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. But after those things, Mark, did you see ESPN come out with their FBI rankings?
I caught enough of it to realize that it's insane once again. I don't know who pushes the buttons over there, but they push the wrong ones consistently.
Well, I'll put it as simple terms as possible. Whatever button you push to get Auburn as the 10th best team, not in your conference, by the way, 10th best team in the country, that formula needs to be tossed out and thrown into the garbage can. Because I can make it a legitimate argument that Auburn is what, the 12th, 13th best team in their conference? Like outside of Vanderbilt, who do we know or have a high likelihood of Auburn finishing better than in the SEC?
Nobody that we know for sure. No, you're correct. Vanderbilt is the only team we know that Auburn is better. They possibly are better than Mississippi State. They're possibly better than Missouri, South Carolina, etc. But you're right. That's the only team we know that they're better than.
The next team that needs to be mentioned when talking about the FPI and their absolute craziness is Texas having the 5th best odds to make the playoff.
Yes.
They're ahead of Notre Dame.
I saw a listing of not only ESPN's FPI, but based on the FPI, ESPN's most likely playoff scenarios. So the first one's obvious: Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. Who am I missing? Clemson. The second one involved Texas.
3 of them involve Texas. 3 out of the 5.
Yes. What they are basing this on.
Well, Mark, they actually released the highest pregame matchup quality this season by their FPI. Okay.
Okay.
Have you seen this list?
I have not. I'm scurrying to find the FPI list at ESPN. There we go. Okay, let's see. Explain this to us once again. This is the list of what?
The highest pregame matchup quality this season.
Oh.
So the best games.
Okay.
Their top 5 games.
All right.
Number 5, I'm going 5-1. Alabama at Ole Miss. Ohio State at Penn State. Alabama at LSU. Clemson at Notre Dame. And at number 1 is Alabama at Texas.
Well, that makes sense based on their FPI, but their FPI doesn't make sense. Therefore, those game matchups, some of them are screwed up, including their number 1 matchup. But if Texas is the 5th best team in the country and Alabama's number 1, then there you go. I get their.
Well, there's a game on there, Mark, that involves two pretty good teams. That wasn't on their list at all. They had their number 5 team going at their number 2 team, and that didn't even make the list.
Yeah, that should be pretty good. Yeah.
How?
It's like they're outsmarting themselves or something, not listing the most obvious. In their own system, yes. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 5, Notre Dame. Where's Penn State on this list? Oh, they're 12th. Okay.
Ole Miss is 17. So by their logic, 1 playing 17 is better than 5 going to 2.
Yeah.
How?
You know how?
Now somebody explain that to me.
Well, I agree with you, but you know what it is? They put a ton of weight into home versus road.
Well, they put too much weight into it. Way too much weight. If you don't have Notre Dame at Ohio State in your top 5, you put way too much in some category.
Yeah, I want to go through and simply, and somebody should have done this at some point, just what is the home versus road winning percentage in major college football? It's home field advantage counts. It means something, but it's not everything. I bet it's 60-40.
I can agree with that.
Among the Power Five.
Can I share some?
Because if you go to the group of
Can I
five, then you've got a bunch of Alabama matchups against Middle Tennessee, and those are always played at Alabama or Ohio State, and therefore that's going to skew that percentage way off.
Okay, I've got some other oddities for you, Mark, okay?
I love it.
USC, according to this, is the 37th best team, and they're not even the best team in Los Angeles. That would be UCLA at 34.
Oh.
Arizona, for some reason, has a better chance of winning their conference, the Pac-12, than Colorado. I don't know. Texas has the same gap between 1 and 2 of winning the Big 12 as Oklahoma State and Kansas does. So the gap between Oklahoma State and Kansas winning the Big 12 is the same gap as Texas and Oklahoma.
Wow.
At 14%.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense to you?
Well, the two before that, I can understand. UCLA is coming off 8-4. And the other thing that I understand from the FPI, and I'm not an FPI guy, I don't pretend to understand the calculations, but I've heard that the coach and the quarterback continuity factors in heavily. Because the FPI, the year that Justin Fields left, so in 2020, the FPI slammed Ohio State and lifted Michigan to the chances that Ohio State was given of winning the Big Ten in 2020 was like 6%. It was just a number that any college football fan would know. This is absurd. Michigan has like a 70% chance of winning the Big Ten, and Ohio State is 6%. 6%. Like if you could play the Big Ten season out 100 times, doesn't Ohio State win it like 75 times, like all the time? So
that's at a bare minimum too.
It's 6%.
Like 85.
It's this. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. I just don't get it. Auburn is the 10th best team in the country.
There's at least 7 SEC teams, according to the FPI, that's better than Arkansas, which is highly disrespectful because they included Michigan State and Auburn. I don't get that. The Arkansas disrespect being 8 SEC teams with Tennessee above them. The Arkansas disrespect is unreal.
LSU's number 11.
Market.
Okay.
I don't mind that just because of how Brian Kelly is and his stature and the talent they have.
Yeah, like you.
They got good talent.
Texas, I tweeted out Texas, and I forget what my tweet was, something about, I've railed and torn to shreds the FPI in the past, but with Texas at number 6 and Auburn at number 10, it's obviously that ESPN has given me more material to work on this year. Other than that, I don't see any grave issues. I know that the ones that you brought up stand out to you, but I don't have an issue with the USC, UCLA, or Arizona, Colorado.
Yeah, okay. Texas has a 41% chance to win the Big 12.
Wow.
They're giving Oklahoma 27% and Oklahoma State a 14% chance.
So Texas went 5-7, 4-5 in the Big 12 last year. and they're either going to start a quarterback who failed, meaning Hudson Card, failed to play well in those games, or they're going to be playing, albeit a tremendous talent, a completely inexperienced quarterback for the entire season, and they've got a 41% chance of winning the conference. Wow.
That's I don't believe that. Their national championship pick right now is Alabama at 1 and Ohio State at 2. So I think that's largely what the fan base agrees with.
Yeah.
The college football universe. So I got to give them good props to that. But also, the last thing I'll say about it is, what do you think about Pittsburgh being 9?
That's a little high for me, but I don't think it's unreasonable. Pitt, I watched some of their spring game on DVR the other day, and they've got 16 returning starters. They did replace Kenny Pickett with a capable quarterback in Keaton Slovis. So I haven't looked at their non-conference game. I think they played Tennessee because they played them last year in Knoxville, so they must play them at home. So that's their difficult non-conference game. Oh, they've got West Virginia as well, and one JT Daniels now. But I don't have an issue.
No, that should be exciting.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing JT Daniels on the field. I'm shocked he was in the portal for that long. Very surprising. But that's all I got for you, Mark. Let's hit the like and subscribe button to get Mark to 34,000 subs.
Yeah, we're awfully close. Thanks to Real MVP. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. So we've talked some FBI, and of course, I ran down the national championship seasons from 2010 through 21. And if this stream proves successful and it seems as though people are interested in this conversation, we will continue through the various decades. If not, then we'll just let it go. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hi, Mark. This is Joey Holster.
Joey! What's going on?
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
Not a lot. Good. I wanted to call in and explain that super chat.
Okay, please do.
So you had said before during the West Virginia show one night, someone asked you how you felt like we would do, and you said bottom would be 6-6, but most likely we would be 7-5.
Okay, that's right.
And
yes.
I was asking you, since we got JT, does that go to 9-3 or 8-4?
Well, you must be reading my mind, Joey, because actually there's a Facebook group that that Justin Walker put together, and somebody commented in there something about JT Daniels, and I responded. I said, "This team is gone." Oh, they commented, "I thought we were going to go 7-5. Now I think 9-3," and I responded, "That's definitely a fair statement. I believe West Virginia has gone from one of the 3 worst quarterback rooms in the conference to one of the 3 best." So that certainly seems to be worth a couple against the likes of, I don't need to tell you, West Virginia, Iowa State, West Virginia, TCU, West Virginia. There's a number of teams in the conference, Texas, that you could line them up against and say, this game's probably a toss-up. And now that leans West Virginia's way. So I think 2 wins is reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, we had, 4 losses last year were 50-50 losses. And that's just how it is in the Big 12. There's so many games that are just toss-ups.
But how many wins did you have that were toss-ups?
Only, we had four wins that were toss-ups too. So we need to flip all of them if we can.
Well, that's kind of tough to do.
That'd be ideal.
Well, of course, it's ideal. It's ideal to win them all. But what's reasonable? Okay. Lost to Maryland by a touchdown, 6 points.
If we could flip 2 of them, if we could flip 2 of those 4, 2 of those 4 losses that were 50-50, if we could just flip 2 of them.
Yep.
all of a sudden we have an 8-win season.
Sure.
So, and I don't think that's unreasonable. Now, I have seen a lot of people in chats, in your chat, in Uncle Lou's chat, and Golden Voodoo's chat, saying, you know, hey, we're going to play for the Big 12 championship. We're going to be in the playoff. I think that's ridiculous. I don't see us doing that. I'm not going to be that naive. I will say that I think we definitely could go 10-2. I think we could. I'm not saying we're going to. I think it's more likely we go 8-4. I think would be the most likely scenario. And I do believe that the Pitt game just got a lot more interesting, especially having two former USC players battling each other at quarterback there.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Absolutely. I look forward to that game even before JT Daniels came on board.
Right. And you know, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out, I don't think we had the worst quarterback room. We have 2 4-star quarterbacks that are freshmen, you know. So we have Nico Marchio, we have Garrett Green, and Goose Crowder. Goose Crowder is a 4-star. Nico Marchio is 4-star. And then now we have JT Daniels. We didn't have the worst quarterback room. We just had the most inexperienced quarterback room. I think would be the fair statement there. I think that I'm also wanting to say, going back to something the real MVP said, that there's no way, there's not a chance that Texas wins the Big 12 this year. That I just don't see, and especially after all this come out about this player in Texas, putting out something on social media, and the coach telling him to shut up, more or less. I don't believe that should have happened at all. I mean, the player he wasn't complaining. He was just saying what's wrong at Texas. I think he has a right to voice his opinion.
He has a right. Yes, he's an American. I believe that he has a right to voice his opinion. I don't think it's a wise thing to do. If you're part of a team, then there's an understanding that you keep certain matters unless they become so wrong that they need to be taken to an authority. That's a whole other matter. If somebody's doing something illegal or abusive or something, that's different. But in terms of what goes on in the locker room and how you feel you're being coached or the team is being led and it's not of the best of quality, going on social media like that, how does that improve the situation? Calling out your coach in social media, you're basically saying, I don't want to be on this team. Well, then leave. Or go to the coach or the coaching staff and talk to them. This is what I don't like about social media and the use of social media these days by mostly young people. It's that they talk so much about how their teammates are this brotherhood, but then they throw them under the bus out in the open on social media publicly. I wouldn't do that to my brother.
Right.
I'd talk to him. I would talk to him in private if I had an issue with him. Wouldn't throw him out for public ridicule.
You just made the point. There's no way. If they've got that much problem in the locker room right now, that players are calling out players and throwing them under the bus.
Yeah.
There's no way Texas is going to play for the Big 12 championship this year.
Sure doesn't seem like it, but they have the talent to do it.
Sure, they've had the talent to do it for 10 years.
Yeah.
So they just can't get it done. And I think Tom Herman was their best chance to get that done. I don't believe Sark is the man. That's just me. So
I don't either.
Right,
I don't
Mark,
know why
well,
he has the job. All right, Joey. Thank you so much for the call.
I don't know. All right, Mark. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Appreciate it. And Joey's call reminds me that we'll be live here with West Virginia Live at the Voice of College Football. So join us again on Friday night at 8 Eastern for West Virginia Mountaineers live right here. And yes, I questioned the Sark hiring at the time and certainly through one season, and that's not the end of the line. That's not that he won't have an opportunity to turn this thing around, and certainly brought in a top 5 recruiting class. But what did he do at USC or Washington that warrants him getting a head coaching job at Texas? The answer is nothing but be mediocre. All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, Mr. Mark. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good, Michael. What's going on?
Not much. I'm just looking. I just want to pick up where the real left and stuff like that. I'm just looking through ESPN, FPI, and they, to me, a lot of street cred today, because how is it they got Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota I can see, but they're still rebuilding their offensive line, and Wisconsin and stuff like that. When they was all mediocre last year, even though Iowa did get to the Big Ten championship and stuff like that. But how can they all be ranked ahead of Purdue?
Okay, so I'm trying to find Purdue. Where is Purdue? Purdue's at...
Purdue is 44th, right below Maryland.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how they ranked ahead of. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't quite get that. Maryland's better than Purdue. Well, they certainly weren't last year. We know that. They weren't even close. Between Purdue, Minnesota, Iowa, between those 3 teams, we know that they were all 3 very close last year. Minnesota beat Purdue. Purdue beat Iowa. Iowa beat Minnesota. They've all finished 9-3 or 9-4.
Beat Minnesota?
Pardon me?
Did you say Purdue beat Minnesota?
Minnesota beat Purdue.
Yes, now? Minnesota, yeah.
So, yes.
And I'm just trying to figure out, what is the big deal about Nebraska? Why does everybody think they're going to be better this year?
Well, they got a much better quarterback. Much better. He's better. I don't think anybody questions that. They have a better quarterback. And yes, they went 3-9. And this is the raging debate of all the offseason among anytime Nebraska's brought up is they were 3-9. That's awful. Or they were 3-9, but they played Michigan State to overtime. They played Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Michigan to 1-score games. They played everybody to a 1-score game and blew it. So they played, there's no question, even the biggest Nebraska hater would admit they played better than 3-9. So you would expect this year against a worse schedule. They've got no Ohio State, no Michigan State. They still have Michigan, but they picked up 2 worse teams in the East to replace Ohio State and Michigan State. So they've got a fairly, they got 2 games that are much easier.
Rutgers?
Yeah, they got 2 games that are much easier. So it's easy to see that they should go 6-6 or 7-5, something in that range.
But to have a 29% chance to win the Big Ten West this year,
yeah, that's high.
And I'm drawing a blank on who the quarterback is. I know he came from Texas.
Casey Thompson.
Okay. Yep, I was just wondering. So, and I don't know. I mean, it could happen, but I don't know. We'll see what happens and stuff like that. But with Wisconsin and stuff, I did see. Didn't they just pick up trying to think who the new offensive coordinator was? Wisconsin just got.
Oh, Wisconsin?
Yeah.
I am drawing a blank. I thought you were asking about Nebraska with Mark Whipple. Wisconsin's new offensive coordinator. Well, as soon as I see this, I'm going to hit myself in the head because I usually know these things. Wisconsin. Oh, that's right. This is one of the reasons why they were in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. Bobby Ingram, the former Penn State wide receiver. Yes, they came in from Baltimore.
Yeah, from Baltimore.
Exactly.
Was he with the Ravens?
Yes.
All right. He'll be a decent quarter. I mean, I think he'll be a decent offensive coordinator, but we'll see and stuff like that. But I don't know. Oh, hey, congrats on getting your glasses fixed, by the way.
That was a few weeks ago. Thank you for that, Michael. Appreciate it.
I just noticed it stuff a little bit ago when I commented about it.
They're
But I
actually
don't
new
know,
glasses.
stuff like that. I mean,
the
like,
old ones are right here. So
are they? No, they look identical, but I was just wondering stuff. But no, I'm thinking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but are you expecting maybe 9-3 with Marcus Freeman this year, or maybe 10-2?
well, the two obvious losses are Ohio State and Clemson, most likely, and then maybe they trip up against somebody else. So my money would be on
But-
10-2,
Go
and
ahead.
if it's going to go in either direction from there, I would say 9-3.
But it's that. Yeah, I know it's just a spring game, and they still got 5 months before the season starts and stuff like that. But is that a winnable game for Notre Dame since it's up at top end this year?
Oh, sure, it's winnable. Clemson's offense is their passing game's a mess right now, unless well, let's see, that's going to be an early November game, right?
Yeah.
Well, I expect Clemson to have a different quarterback by then. I expect Cade Klubnik to be their starting quarterback, the 5-star freshman.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was gonna say, but are you still sticking to the thing? And I talked to you. I think this is back in February, so where you think Clifford and Stroud. I mean, Clifford's better than O'Connell.
No, I don't. We're going to do our Big Ten
Okay.
quarterback rankings here very soon. No, I do not think that Sean Clifford is better than Aiden O'Connell. I believe that Aiden O'Connell's unless I'm missing somebody, the second best quarterback in the Big Ten.
That's right. Yeah, I said that to you with TJ Stroud being number one. But getting back to your topic and stuff like that, I think if it wasn't for the 2012, even though I think Ohio State was on probation that year, I think it might have been a better game with Alabama in the national championship than Notre Dame. I don't think they would have been able to beat Alabama though, but I'm sure it'd been a better game. And wouldn't that with Cardell Jones as the quarterback?
No, that would have been
What was the
Braxton
quarterback
Miller.
Miller, I'm sorry. Do you think that would have been a better game, you think, than the beatdown they gave Notre Dame?
Absolutely. But Alabama was the best team in the country. They were a great team, no question about that. I believe Ohio State would have been a better opponent, but not considerably better. But yeah, this is obviously all conjecture, but we'll never know. But probably the two best teams in the country might have been Alabama and Oregon, or Alabama and Georgia as well.
What,
they played in the SEC championship game.
Not bad. I was just wondering stuff like that. All right. As always, thanks for taking my call and enjoy. Have a great rest of the show, Mark.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Our Purdue fan, Michael. Appreciate that. If we have any other Purdue fans, this reminds me of something. Please send me. I'll never be able to find the graphic because I've got a different folder opened here. But please send me an email at MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. Tell me who you root for. Right now, we have had about 400 or 500 people, I would say, that have sent in emails to let me know who they root for. And then if you want to tell me about yourself and how you became a college football fan and all of that. But we'd love to know how long you've been watching, but most of all, who you root for, because as we near 34,000 on the main channel here, would love to have a clear picture of what fan bases we are reaching. That would be great to know. All right. Here's our next call at the Voice of College Football. Welcome.
Hola, amigo. This is Jorge calling from Portland, Oregon.
Jorge, how's it going?
And
Buenos dias.
talking in Spanish. Isn't that great? You didn't know I knew Spanish.
Oh, I know a little Espanol. It doesn't sound too well. It's with that Midwestern accent.
Yeah. John, I was born in Florida. I grew up in Pennsylvania. Then I moved to Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. I could just go on and on. And people all my life have asked me, why don't you have, I can't place you, like you don't have an accent. And it's because I've lived everywhere. It's like all conjumbled together, you know, it works out.
It's like that Johnny Cash song.
What's that?
It's called I've Been Everywhere.
Which one? Yeah, I've been everywhere, man.
Yeah.
I joined the Air Force when I was 17. And when you join the Air Force, you have to give them a list of everywhere you've ever lived. They got to do a security background check on you. It took me and my families, my uncles, my dad, my cousins, grandparents. It took us 3 or 4 days to come up with those addresses. I had 30 X addresses when I was 17. That's 2 a year, basically.
You've lived quite a life, George.
Enrollment. It was early enrollment. You could join the Air Force and then not actually go in for 6 or 8 months. That's what I did, you know, back in 78. But it took us days and days. The grown-ups, I was a kid, the grown-ups are going, what the hell was that address in Montgomery? My dad bought and sold restaurants. It was very legitimate. But me and my kid brothers, we used to joke around like he's a hitman for the mafia or something, you know, like this is like, and some of my brothers hated moving that much, but I loved it. I'm like, let's go check out the next school, you know. I'm what do you call it? An extrovert.
Well, we've never met face to face, and a lot of people that like to talk incessantly actually are introverts. You know, sometimes we get that wrong about who's an introvert and an extrovert, but I would have pegged you, yes, as an extrovert.
I don't usually reveal myself this deeply on college football talk shows, but the truth is I'm an introvert, and I use this cover of an extrovert to protect myself when I'm out.
A lot of people do that.
You know?
Okay.
Because really,
you just called yourself an extrovert, though. You just called yourself an extrovert before that.
Right. I did, but the truth is I'm an introvert, but that's my defense, you know, against the world. You know, I overwhelm them so they get me the fuck away from me. I've done this in prison twice. I actually ran the prison. It's called a shot caller, you know, because I'm slick and I'm funny and the biggest, meanest guys in prison valued me as a friend because I could tell them all this legal, technical shit. They're like, leave that dude alone. He's my friend. And plus, I'm physically just not afraid of people because I did that like Navy SEAL training shit, you know? I'm like, I'm just not afraid of nothing. I'm getting older, though. I realize nowadays I cannot handle the world the way it is. Like if someone rips my car door open with a knife or something, I might be in trouble. The older you get, you just, you know what I mean?
Oh, I know what you mean.
If I don't win, yeah. I better win that fight in 5 seconds or I'm done. I'm going to fall down wheezing, you know?
How's your boy doing?
Oh my God. I've been working for like 2 weeks straight. People say they don't see me anymore on talk shows. But I'm so happy. When I first walked into this house, I told my kid, man, bring a bulldozer. This place should be condemned. And now it looks like it's just so beautiful. I almost want to move in there. It's amazing what you can do with a little labor and paint and new flooring and new carpet and new light fixtures, etc. New windows. You know, the whole house is new now, you know.
I need to bring you guys over here.
It's a Section 8 house. It's the first time my kid's ever done one. And I have a feeling my kid can work till the end of time now after what we've just done to this house for the Section 8 housing people in Oregon. But the guy said, if you think this is bad, wait till you see the next one and the one after that and the one after that. And he said, when you come back to this one, you won't believe the way it looks. He said, it's 100% guaranteed. Somebody's going to come here, thrash the house, move a year later, not pay their rent. We're going to take us 9 months to evict them, and we're going to start all over. He said, that's all we do repetitively. I'm on Section 8 housing. They have never heard a peep out of me for 10 years. There's never been a phone call, a police report. I don't do nothing wrong. Why would you? I'm getting free rent, you know? And these other people, you see them out there panhandling or living in tents, they've already had a free house, but they can't maintain it because they do meth and smoke heroin and fentanyl. And I'm not even going to continue. I'm just going to stop right there. It's so sad.
It
They
is
just
sad.
don't appreciate it.
Well, George, we do have college football callers lined up here. So
I saw Florida's spring game today. That's what I called to talk about.
oh, okay. The Florida spring game. I DVR'd it. I'm gonna watch it in the morning. So what do you got for us?
Yeah, there's not much to see.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson looked good. The whole thing looked pretty good. The blue team beat the orange team like 31-0 or something. It looks like if Anthony Richardson goes down, we're in trouble. He's the only quarterback that looked competent.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. Hey, you know how when you're in school and you pull a girl's pigtails because you like her and you don't know how to interface with her and all that kind of stuff? I mean, that back in the days, in the 80s, 60s, and 70s, there was a joke like you pull a girl's pigtail and she turns around and goes, "Don't do that."
Yes.
I think Pizza Woman likes me because she's pulling my pigtails.
Pulling your pigtail
in the chat.
Well, you should be pulling her pigtail. Right. She wouldn't be pulling
your
pigtail.
I know. Yeah, no, she's doing it to me. She started it.
All right.
And then my hair's almost long enough now. I could almost do a pigtail. I love you, Pizza Woman. I love you back.
All right. You two watch yourselves in the chat. Keep it clean.
She thinks I just smoke pot and get drunk all day. That is not true. I only do that in the evening mostly.
It's just in the evening.
Some of the time.
You've put in some hard days work for a few weeks here.
Hey, listen, Sour YT said, George, 2024, I am willing to run if I am called upon. I need to stop this before we get Hitler for president. I see how this is going right now. We're going to get so desperate, we're going to get some insane person in office. Elect me, write me in, and I promise a return to normalcy.
You would return us to normalcy. You would be the one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, George.
I'm going to give everybody $40, 40 acres and a mule, and a gold coin. We're going to start over.
I love it. All right, George. Let's get those. Let's print out those bumper stickers, campaign signs.
Yeah. Write George in, or write in president. My vice president, I guess, DeReal MVP 24.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I'll pick you, DeReal.
And you're right. Just going by the one name, George. No last name required. Very nice. All right, George.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll pick, everybody knows my face.
All right, man.
George. All right. Love you guys. Bye.
All right. I believe our next call is going to be about college football. Here we go. Welcome in.
Hey, Mark. This is Sean.
Hey, Sean. How you doing?
Just calling. I good. I jumped in a little bit late, so you're talking a little bit about the national championships from the past decade plus.
Yes, the last decade.
Yes, and it's an interesting. I always just like topics like discussions like this and talking about who earned it right here. Who's won the title, and I don't know. I mean, certainly, I think the playoff has eliminated a lot of what could be controversy over who ended up winning.
Yep.
The title. I mean, there are very few programs that can like legitimately claim without that they absolutely earned a shot for the title that didn't get it. You know, like Auburn in 2004 is the one that they were undefeated in the SEC. 12-0 through an SEC schedule and didn't get a chance to play. And I'm glad to see we gotten that BS out of the game. So obviously this includes a little bit of the pre-playoff era. And the one that kind of jumped to my mind was Michigan State in 2013.
Yes.
There's a chance they were the best team in the country. And, I mean, they maybe weren't the best team throughout. I was at that game against Notre Dame, and the egregious pass interference calls that very likely cost MSU
Yeah.
an undefeated season that year.
If I remember right, there were a few of them.
Underdogs. Oh yeah, there were like 3 or 4, and they were just all like phantom, just and all at like really crucial points on like 4th downs, and so it was. They're the ones I kind of think what if. I mean, they would have been underdogs against FSU for sure, but they had a really strong defense in a 1-game scenario, and that FSU team was really, really good, but I don't think they were really even at the levels of the elite teams today. So, yeah, I mean, that's the one that kind of jumps to mind for me. Obviously, if Ohio State wasn't ineligible in 2012, we would not have gotten the best team in the country to win a title that year, probably. And then I also think that the 2014 season, I actually didn't even agree with Ohio State getting in the playoff that year. I thought the committee kind of got snowed by just a ridiculous performance the night before, but I didn't really think the resume of Ohio State. They lost to a 6-6 Virginia Tech team that season. Should have gotten in over. I guess it probably would have been Baylor that year, who would have gotten the other spot. And so that's, I mean, and aside from that, I mean, I don't exactly know, like, and I didn't catch the beginning parts. Did you have any other like commentary on any of the controversies of the past decade?
Yeah, so I grinded this down to a minute degree, so I'm not going to do that. But
yeah.
So briefly, 2011, Oklahoma State should have been given, in my opinion, an opportunity, even though Alabama and LSU. So I differentiate who I believe earned it versus who I believe were the best teams. 2011, I thought Alabama and LSU were clearly the 2 best teams in the country, but that doesn't negate what happened in the regular season, that Alabama did not win a conference. Oklahoma State did. So I would have gone Oklahoma State, LSU in 2011. 2012, again, you can't erase Ohio State's probation, but if we're just looking at football on the field, the 2 best teams I believed in 2012 were Alabama and Georgia, but the 2 teams that earned it on the field, and again, the Ohio State, they would have had to play a Big Ten championship game as well. So 2013, I pretty much mirror everything that you say. I'm not discounting what Auburn did. I'm not saying that they didn't earn a national championship game spot, but because of the system, Michigan State, I think, earned it just as much, if not more. 2014, I don't know why. Well, I do know why, and I made the same statement when I went through 2014, that why the controversy involved Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor when Alabama and Oregon also lost a game. So everybody lost a game except Florida State, but for some reason, Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor were the only teams mentioned in the controversy. TCU and Baylor, of course, did not play a conference championship game. That's what I differentiate. Ohio State winning a Big Ten and getting there. So I didn't have any issue with the playoff selection. So most of these years, I don't have an issue with the committee and the decision that they have to make, but I have an issue with the system and the structure eliminating teams that won conference championship games with 1 loss, like TCU, like Baylor. 2015.
Well, why?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I 100% agree with that statement. I actually didn't have much of a problem with the structure of the BCS. Sort of the human and analytic hybrid component with that. I thought that was a good idea. You can tinker around with the system a little bit. The only problem with the BCS is that it just only gave us 2 teams. That was it. I would prefer some sort of system like that where there is objective criteria that actually matters rather than a bunch of eyeballs just determining who the teams are. And obviously there's a ton of there's tons of biases that jump into it. I mean, when the choices are Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor, even if Ohio State is the most deserving team in that, there's going to be allegations of politics no matter what. You know, I mean, of course they're going to pick Ohio State over, you know, two tiny Christian schools, you know.
True. Fair enough.
Yeah.
2015, I don't have an issue with the selections at all. I will note that I think any reasonable fan that analyzes football knows that Ohio State was one of the four best teams. They didn't earn the spot. They lost to Michigan State, but Michigan State won on smoke and mirrors, most notably against Michigan that year in a complete debacle of a game and a conclusion to a game. So Ohio State didn't earn it, but if the committee was selecting teams in 2015 the way that they selected them later, where they just used the phrase, we're selecting the four best teams, then you've got to select Ohio State. But they didn't earn it. 2016.
Let me ask you this question, though.
Yep.
Do you think if they were the exact same like scenario happened, say it's the exact same situation like this year, and Ohio State's expected to be one of the two or three best teams in the country, and it could be Michigan State, it could be, you know, anybody, it could be Maryland for all I know, but like some team that's kind of not really in the big boys club, kind of wins a weird game, has kind of a wacky, sort of fluky looking season, but they beat Ohio State. They're both 11-1 at the end of the year, and that team, you know, gets the division on criteria, and they go on and win the Big Ten title. But it's obvious to anyone who watches it and to like Vegas and all those people that Ohio State has the better team. In today's day, do you actually think that they would still put Ohio State in?
I think they're more likely to do it. I don't know. I can't answer that question as to whether they would do it when there's fair competition, and we all know that Michigan State won the game. And I have no issue with what was determined because that goes along with playing the games on the field. But, you know, Michigan State that season notched what has to be the worst loss of a playoff team. They lost to a 5-7 Nebraska team. And again, they really had no business winning the game against Michigan. It's one thing to win a game in a crazy fashion. It's another to have it handed to you. So when the Michigan punter couldn't even catch the punt snap, and even then, all he had to do was fall on the football and the game would have been over. But he flipped it up in the air. Yeah. It's just, and that's not Michigan State's fault.
They still had to finish the play too. There at Michigan State. Michigan State, the receiver had to, or one, you know, a defender had to.
He had to catch the ball and run.
You know, he had to have like five people there to block for him to make sure he got in.
Yeah,
and it almost didn't happen. A guy caught him. Like, I mean, if he had to go 5 yards further, he wouldn't have made it. But you know, I mean, it is what it is.
That's football.
You can say it's a fluke and everything, but yeah.
Ironically, Alabama made it to the SEC championship game on a similarly freaky play, benefiting them and
game they weren't involved in at all. Yeah.
Yes, the Arkansas Ole Miss game. Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean,
you know, 2016. I'm a Penn State guy in 2016. I go with the head-to-head in the Big Ten championship. Although I understand the Ohio State argument, I go with Penn State in 2016. In 2017, I don't have any issue with it, but I do think it's ironic that Alabama gets the nod in 2017 as a non-division winner when Wisconsin had a one-game better record and went to a conference championship game. And Ohio State kind of fell victim to what Penn State did the year before. They went 11-2, but they won the Big Ten. And then, of course, UCF in 2017 and 18 did what, in some instances, they did what Cincinnati did this past season, but did not get included.
Yeah. I mean, do you happen to know, like, where did UCF? I can't even remember. Where did UCF finish in the final rankings? Were they, like, even close those 2 years?
In the very final,
top six?
after the bowl game?
Yeah.
I think they were 8th.
Yeah. Okay, so not really within striking distance ever of getting in.
No, they were like
In
12th.
those spots.
Even undefeated. They were, yeah.
So, and
they didn't
I guess
have a
Cincinnati
Notre
did have
Dame.
that.
They did not have a Cincinnati-like win versus a Notre Dame.
Right. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on playoff expansion? Exactly.
My thoughts are that I'm for playoff expansion. And if we were playing video games, not with real people, I would expand it to 16 games or 16 teams, but I don't think that's feasible for a number of reasons. So I would go with 8 teams, because the reason I don't like the 12-team format, and I like everything else, the 12-team format that was proposed by the committee, I think is as good of a 12-team format as possible. I like the nuances of you have to be a conference champion to get a bye. I like the idea of first-round playoff games on campus. All those things, everything they did concerning the 12-team proposal, I was in favor of, except for I'm not a believer in buys. So you've probably not heard my spiel on buys, but I'll try to be brief with it.
Yeah. Cliff notes here.
For me, buys work in the NFL because the schedules are so similar. So if there's a division winner that's 13-3 and there's another division winner who's 10-6, well, they played such similar schedules, and probably 10 or 12 out of the 16 games that they played were against the same teams, that the team that earned the bye truly earned the bye. But in this scenario, you're asking 13 people to determine that one 12-1 team that won a conference is better than another 12-1 team in another conference that didn't play any of the same teams, and they're giving a huge advantage to one team, giving them a bye over another team as the 5 seed with no bye. And the reason the bye is such a huge advantage is, number one, the obvious, you can't lose if you have a bye. But also, even for the team that survives the game, that had to play the 5-12 seed game, they just got beat up. They had to play the 12th best team in the country. They got beat up. They possibly lost a player or two. It happens that they won't have to play that next game. And the advantage that I don't think ever gets talked about, that I bring up from time to time, is the team that received the bye gets to game plan for those 2 teams for 3 weeks, while those 2 teams have to game plan for each other. So the team that's waiting gets the game plan for 3 weeks and wait. And then they also get the benefit of those 2 teams playing an actual game that they can scout right before they get to play the winner. So I think it's a completely unfair system with a bye. So I'm not for buys. I'm for an 18 playoff with all 5 conference champions represented, and a decision made about the group of 5 that's not vague, that they're being considered each year. I would either eliminate them or include them, formally include them, give them 1 spot, or exclude them. None of this wishy-washy, we don't know if we're going to include them or not.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's a completely fair, workable system. What do you think something like that does to the bowl the bowl game, because right now I can't really see the bowl system surviving in any sort of way with any significant playoff expansion. And I mean, the bowls, I mean, as much of a joke as the actual games have become, they do still seem to be like a fairly reasonable incentive through the year. Like you can tell it means something to some programs to actually become bowl eligible or to actually get a bowl invite. And I mean, if it just becomes all about the playoffs, then I think you're losing a little bit of the magic of the flair of college football in general. And I mean that. I don't know. I say that, and then I see like a bunch of players sit out the Rose Bowl because it doesn't mean anything now. So if the Rose Bowl doesn't mean anything, I mean, what is the future of this system? I mean, we're going to have to come to a point where we're going to have to go one of two ways, I think, because what we have right now doesn't seem to be working ideally at all.
So everything that you say makes sense, and it also seems to be the sentiment of most college football fans. However, the facts are that people still watch bowl games. And the fact is that most of the players still participate in the bowl games. Overwhelmingly, most of the players still play in the bowl game. So you brought up the Rose Bowl. Ohio State had 4 players sit out. Utah had, I don't know that they had any. I might be mistaken.
I don't think they had any. I mean, the only major draft prospect they had is Devin
Lloyd. Sure.
And he played in.
Okay, there you go. So even though it took away from the Rose Bowl to have 4 of the best players for one team out, that's still 4 players out of, and I'm not going to count everyone on both rosters, 40 some players that play on each team that actually are on the field and participate at some level, a number of plays. So it's still a minuscule amount. Now it's obviously going to be near the very best players. But these are still TV events that they have declined in viewership, but everything in sports and across the board on television has declined in viewership. But people still watch bowl games, even to the extent that more people watch bowl games than watch anything of college basketball until we get deep into the tournament.
So does expanding it even to like 8 teams even water down those products even more though, even with the bowl game?
The bowls?
Include expansion. Yeah.
It takes 4 teams off the board that are currently playing in bowl games.
Mm-hmm. And one of those would have been like an Ohio State this year. So I mean, and it might have included Utah depending on how you construct the system.
Yeah.
So,
but if you just go by
you could potentially have it.
If you just go by the playoff rankings, then
Iowa game.
If you just go by the playoff rankings, then Notre Dame would have made the playoff, and Oklahoma State would have made, or I'm sorry, Baylor would have made the playoff, and let's say Ohio State and who am I missing?
Oklahoma State, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, whoever the next 4 teams were, and like you say, if depending on the format, it might have been Utah. So then you get a Rose Bowl with Oregon and Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, that's you. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's real excited to racing out to watch that game this year at the end of the season. So, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, like playoffs have changed college football maybe even more than I thought they would. Certainly have changed the end of the season more than I thought they would. And I mean, I do think expansion really, really blows a lot of this stuff up, blows a lot of this tradition just out of the water.
Oh, sure.
I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I'm not necessarily, I mean, like, but, I mean, I think you have to be aware of like the real consequences of what we're doing with these sometimes. And
Playoff expansion
don't
will
know
make
if,
more games meaningful during the regular season, opposed to what popular opinion is. It will make more games important during the regular season and meaningful. All right, I better take more calls. I
thank you
appreciate the
very
call.
much. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Let's go next up here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, Jared the actor. It's been a while since I called you, but I'm back again.
Well, thanks for the call. Appreciate you coming back.
Absolutely. And I have to commend you because you've had some very verbose callers this evening, with George kind of treating you like a psychiatrist. And the last caller just droning on and on and on. You have the patience of a saint, sir.
Well, if I guess I'll quote my favorite musical artist that, if it could be complained about ripping the shirt off of his back, he said, well, the fans put it there, so it's theirs anyway. So if I wasn't taking phone calls and listening to everybody, then if I was broadcasting to no one, then that would not be a good thing. I would have to go get a real job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that conversation with George, I was thinking to myself the whole time, when's he gonna cut this guy off? But you didn't do that, so that was commendable on your part.
Well, what's on your mind?
Yeah, of course. So I will ask a college football question, and the one that comes to the top of my head, based on recent events, is the NIL implications. And for me, I've been following a lot of it, and I personally think it's in the process of destroying not only Power 5 college football, but really destroying the lesser conferences. And so I just want to get your take on that in terms of kind of turning it into a free agency league, and what that means for college football going forward.
Well, I think it all depends on our tolerance for it. So there's a lot of things that have gone on in sports, both collegiately and professionally, that years ago people would not tolerate. But if it unfolds and unravels at a certain pace, then we become conditioned to it. And therefore, what would have turned us off and turned off society 50 years ago doesn't turn us off today, because it unraveled and became part of the norm in a progressive fashion within a process. And while the NIL situation turns off many people, including myself, it also makes for more news and more discussion surrounding that news about what player is going to go where. And we just acquired this player because we lost that player. And it keeps college football in the news cycle during the off season.
Do you think that disadvantages a lot of lesser schools, or even Power 5 schools that aren't as hyped up as maybe some of the big names?
Well, that would appear to be the case. That makes sense. What you just said is logical. However, think of it this way. There is a finite number of roster positions within the college football universe. So that same number of players are going to fit within those number of roster spots across 65 Power 5 and 130 FBS schools, regardless of whether everybody's being paid $1 million or some are being paid $10 million and some $50,000, or nobody's being paid. There's still so whether the blue bloods and the cash cows of football programs have that money to spend and it's now legal to spend, or become partnered with companies that can spend it, or we're going back to the olden days in which players just gravitated to those schools because they would be seen and be developed toward the NFL. Regardless of the incentive, it seems as though it's going to continue on this path where the schools with the power, the prestige, and the most numbers of fans in the stands and TV ratings are going to own the sport. So it doesn't seem to be changing, at least to date. We were already at a place where there was this elite, small, thin tier of elite teams anyway.
Yeah, I just think it furthers the gap between the elite teams and the haves and have-nots. I think I saw it today on ESPN where Sarkisian disparaged one of his players for being on a podcast where he indicated that he's in like a super senior, and he indicated that all the young players coming into that program were all about getting women and like all the perks of the NLL process. I don't know if you saw that, but it is kind of
I heard about it.
My interest.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, and part of this is NIL related, but it's also the transfer portal, and there's overlap in terms of the impact and how they're related, that I think is damaging the sport. Is I think for all of us that have a favorite team, we grew up having a certain amount of pride that the players that played for our team were always a Buckeye, always a Seminole, always a Trojan. And we could watch Monday Night Football 10 years later, and Reggie Bush is going to identify himself as a USC Trojan because he didn't play for anybody else. And Ezekiel Elliott is an Ohio State Buckeye. He never played for anybody else. And except for very rare occurrences with grad transfers, the players were loyal to the schools and they played throughout their careers, whether they played through their senior season or their junior season, and forever identified with that school, and their fan base therefore could claim loyalty and ownership over that player for the rest of eternity. That's being lost. And so that attachment and loyalty will probably drag down the sport because fans won't have the same level of loyalty to the teams through the players because they played for multiple schools.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a cancer on the sport. I hope it doesn't drag it down too much, but to your point, it seems like it could be going in that direction. So anyway, I just wanted to call in about that, Mark, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Appreciate the call. All right, let's take another call here at the Voice of College Football. Welcome. Who's on the line?
To the man that gives college football its voice, the great Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
David, I'm doing well. How are you?
If I was doing any better, it would be a sin, Mark Rogers.
Oh, boy.
But I'm happy to be talking college football with you. Yep, indeed. I want to give you a call. First of all, just as an Ohio State fan, it's been rough. This Dwayne Haskins, and it's just a difficult situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I did want to make one point. It was just kind of a favorite memory, if I can, as a longtime Ohio State fan. I have to say, I mean, that Maryland performance was incredible, but I think you can make a case. I don't know if you said it at the time, Mark, that he may have had the greatest performance an Ohio State quarterback ever had against Michigan in that 2018 game, especially when you consider how good Michigan's defense was that year.
Yeah, I did not state it, but it was, over the course of these conversations, as you can imagine, a lot of things go through my head that I either reserve from stating because I try to spotlight the three that we have on, or just the conversation changes and therefore I don't get a chance to state whatever's on my mind. But that was definitely on my mind, that at a time when you would have to go back to ancient history to find scores like Ohio State put on Michigan of 62 points in 2018 against a defense that was the number one ranked defense in the country. To your point, yes, I was thinking the same thing, that was just unthinkable at the time, that Ohio State was going to score 62 points against the number one ranked defense in the country. And he, of course, was the orchestrator.
Yeah, it's interesting. Before that, I would have said, interesting enough, I had heard him say one time that, his favorite quarterback, growing up was Troy Smith, at Ohio State. And before that, I actually would have said Troy Smith's performance in 06 in that game was the best quarterback performance I'd seen in that game by an Ohio State quarterback. And it's interesting, Haskins kind of outdid that, considering, he had said, I believe one time, that Smith was his favorite quarterback. I don't know if you heard that as well.
No, I did not.
Yeah, it was something I found interesting. I think, let's put it this way. I think Dwayne Haskins has the best performance against Michigan until this season, when C.J. Stroud totally outdoes him and throws for like 7 touchdowns against them. But we're going to have to wait until November to see that happen.
Well, I know you can't wait for that.
Yes, I believe you me, I can't. To that point, I saw your weekly appearance on Chris Farley's podcast. I mean, Steve Dace's podcast, and I found it interesting. Is he trying to convince you that they've got a better football team this year than they had last year? Because it seems like he was trying to go down that road.
Oh, absolutely. He believes that. He believes whatever his metric system, he's got some kind of system that measures productivity and all of that. It doesn't take into account starts, because that to him is outdated. And I'm not arguing with him when I say it, that to him it's outdated. I just don't have a stance on that that's as defined as he does. But he measures the talent quotient on each team and the productivity coming back, and says that Michigan is a better football team today than they were in November of 2021.
Well, yeah, I mean, what I found interesting, and I think, by the way, right of you to push back a little bit on that, Mark, because I think, bottom line, I mean, for them to lose their 3 best players on defense, which they clearly lost, right,
Yep.
Mark? Maybe even their 4 best players on defense. At the very least, their 3 best, correct?
Yes.
And then to lose their best offensive player, that's a lot of production there. Now, I would agree that there, at least with the backfield, I would say, I do think Edwards and Quam have really good potential at running back. I'll concede that. But I would say, barring, unless, McCarthy comes in and has, because I think they're going to have to score more points to win games this year. I don't think they're going to be able to win, 17-14, 20-17 kind of games this year. Because I just, with the loss of their 3 best players, I just don't see how they're as good on defense as they were a year ago. And they're going to have to score more points offensively. I don't know if I could see them doing that with McNamara.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The Penn State game comes to mind. That was very much of a defensive effort in a game that Penn State dominated early and did not take advantage of that domination to put points on the board, and led whatever, 7-3 or 10-7, whatever it was. But they dominated the game early and didn't take advantage. And yeah, Michigan won 21-17. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, now if McCarthy comes in and becomes their starter, I don't know if your other Michigan people are saying that they expect that, over the course of the season, that he will take the job this year, and he, plays up to that 5-star ability that he was recruited at, then, maybe we can have a conversation about them being a better football team than they were a year ago. I mean, obviously, what a difference, great quarterback play can make. So until then, I think that there's going to be a drop off there.
Did you see Michigan's spring game?
I watch bits and pieces of it. I try to watch good football, Mark. You know, and that was a cheap shot. I just saw some bits and pieces of it. I didn't see the entire game.
Well, I watched Clemson's spring game this past Saturday, and it looked similar to, and I'm not putting Cade McNamara in the same boat as DJ Uiagalelei, because McNamara's he's a decent quarterback. I don't think he's as good as I've likened him in the past to Stetson Bennett, but I don't think he's as good as Stetson Bennett. But to watch him, and again, it was a spring game. What I believe I stated this to Steve Dace. Maybe I said this in some other, because I went live like the whole day and I was talking about it. Maybe it was during that time that spring game performance. And again, McNamara is at a place where he doesn't need to be that concerned about performing in a spring game, but it showed me, it didn't change my mind about his floor, like that he is the same player that he was, but it indicated to me that that's who he is, and he's not getting better. Like, he couldn't make downfield throws in that scrimmage. And again, I don't expect or anticipate that that's his best football, or that he's razor sharp or tunnel focused, but still, I got to think if CJ Stroud's out there during that game, that he's not missing guys that have, 3-yard leads on a defender that are running down the right sideline. And McNamara couldn't make any throws in that game. Just like Uiagalelei couldn't throw anything but a check down in Clemson's game. Like, anything that was downfield, he missed.
See, last year, I mean, I don't know if you would use this term to describe him as a quarterback, but and obviously those quarterbacks see this term as a, not a very kind term to use to describe them, but I use the term game manager type quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, you think that was a fair term?
It is.
I'm sure some of their fans would describe them that.
Well, I don't think it's a derogatory term unless you're touting the guy as an elite quarterback. Elite quarterbacks can perform. I think it's reasonable to say a game manager, if you're a good game manager, then can you win a championship? Yes, but you have to have a offense built around you that showcases the other players around you. You're a distributor of the football versus a elite quarterback. The game's on his shoulders. Big games are on his shoulders. Whether that may mean the number of passes that have to be thrown is 50 and not 25. Or it may mean the difficulty of those throws is accelerated to a level like CJ Stroud made in the Rose Bowl, versus Cade McNamara may have games where he throws 38 passes, but the majority of those throws are swinging the ball out to Donovan Edwards or Andrell Anthony and letting them produce the yardage, not the air with the ball running through the air. That's the yardage that's made when CJ Stroud's throwing the ball, chucking the ball 35 yards at difficult angles.
Right, and traditionally we put a game manager type quarterback with teams that were built the way they were last year. With a really, really good defense and an extremely strong running game. By the way, that's how Nick Saban won those national titles early on in his years at Alabama, until he upped the level of quarterback play and wide receiver play, and was opened up his offense more.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being able to win that way. Some would say that's the way Georgia won last year, even, too.
And we also have to understand the term game manager and the numbers that are associated with a game manager in 2021 are much different than, say, 2005. Greg McElroy in the national championship game at the Rose Bowl against Texas threw for like 55 yards.
Right. Yeah.
Cade McNamara is winning Big Ten championship games as a quote unquote game manager. I'm guessing throwing for 240.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're still throwing for around 200. Yeah, it's just that the passing numbers are so skewed right now, Mark.
Or as you just said, Stetson Bennett in the national championship game, those would have been like he went maybe 25 for 35 for 240 and a couple touchdown passes, something in that range. Like if he did that in 1995.
Yeah, that's true.
Those aren't game manager kind of stats.
That's right. Hey, I want to get to the national championship years here if I can, Mark. Just kind of looking at it. By the way, I didn't. A couple of the years I had circled here. I wanted to say, from Ohio State fan perspective, 2012. It was unfortunate that we, took the probation that year. Obviously, we would have gotten to play for the national championship. But even I, as an Ohio State fan, admit that was a flawed Ohio State team in a lot of ways. Won a lot of close games. I think they caught a year where the Big Ten was still pretty down in 2012. I think the Big Ten did start to climb up. Probably, really around Ohio State's national title year 14, and then I think it's become a lot better conference, since then. So I think Ohio State took advantage of maybe some of the weakness of the conference that year, won some close games. So, I guess you could say, yeah, the probation isn't there, but I just don't think we were a national championship team in 2012. And I tend to agree with you. I think the true national championship game that year was Georgia and Alabama in the SEC title game. And I think it proved that to be the case, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
So, I mean, not much to really add to that. I would say the interesting thing about 13 for me, and I think the thing that cost Michigan State that year, do you think that might have been could there have been an SEC bias at play that year that they were chosen over Auburn that year not to play in the national title game?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. The SEC at that point had won how many national championships in a row? 06 through 12, 7 consecutive national championships. Can you rewind to 2013 and think how many people would have been in an uproar? And I'm not discounting it or saying that they didn't have a point if they would have said the SEC's won 7 consecutive national championships, and there is an SEC team that is the same record as a team from another conference that got selected to play in the BCS championship game. Why would the SEC not be included? And I would have understood the argument and said, I get it. Sure, there was SEC bias. Absolutely.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, as I said, the Big Ten, was maybe a little bit stronger in 13 than it was in 12. I said it was down in 12. I mean, really, Ohio State, Michigan State were just clearly the two best teams in the Big Ten that year. I don't really even remember who in 2013 was close to being the third best team. Maybe Wisconsin that year, Mark?
Yeah, Wisconsin was okay without looking at Michigan was awful. They were 7-6. Who else would have been in there? Penn State was a 7-5 team. Who else was any good? I think Iowa went 8-5. They lost to LSU in a bowl game. Yeah, there was nobody else that was a top 15 team in the country.
Well, because Auburn fans could go with, quality of victories that year, because obviously their last 2 wins were really good. Of course, they won 2 games that year in the most crazy fashion ever. Of course, that was the year of the kick 6 game, and then that crazy win over Georgia that they had. But they closed you with 2 really strong wins, beating Alabama, and then that Missouri team was really good, as I remember, in the SEC title game. And they may have had another quality victory or 2 in there that I may be missing. I don't know if you remember, Mark.
Yeah, so back to the Big Ten standings. Wisconsin, Nebraska 9-4, Iowa 8-5. That's what was behind Michigan State and Ohio State. And just to give it a look, Michigan State, of course, lost to Notre Dame, and we talked with another caller about that game. And I specifically remember that game and thinking Michigan State got ripped off. They were playing at Notre Dame, who was ranked 22nd at the time, and they must have gotten 4 bad pass interference calls in that game. Michigan State didn't beat anyone ranked until Michigan at number 21, and of course Michigan faltered and finished 7-6. Nebraska was not ranked at the time of their win, but they finished ranked. And so they backed it up against Ohio State and Stanford, 2 top 5 teams in the country. Versus Auburn, we know who they beat in the Iron Bowl, who may have been the best team in the country. So,
Right.
And we know that Georgia was good. They weren't great, but they were good. So their loss was to number 6 LSU by 2 touchdowns. And then coming down the stretch, so some of these rankings are going to be skewed, and I'll try to put them in context. They beat Texas A&M 45-41. Texas A&M was number 7 in the country, but that was one of those teams that faltered down the stretch, wasn't quite as good as number 7. And then they didn't play anybody else ranked until Georgia was barely ranked at number 25, and they, of course, had the ball that deflected. I don't know if you recall the play that they beat Georgia on, that crazy downfield pass. That Georgia team was only number 25 in the country. Then they beat Alabama, who, again, could be argued as the best team in the country. Who knows if they're playing in the national title game against Florida State? I don't think any one of us would have been surprised that Nick Saban would have hoisted another trophy. And then, like you say, Missouri was number 5, and then they took Florida State to the wire. So to their credit, they didn't go to the Florida State game and get waxed. They were in it until the very last second.
Yeah, and by the way, as an Ohio State, that was another year where our defense let us down, by the way.
Yeah.
I knew our defense was bad once we made Devin Gardner look like Joe Montana and Tom Brady had a baby. I don't think he ever had a better game in his life that year than he had against us. And then Connor Cook tore us apart in the title game. And, that's why I was wondering, even though I really liked our offense that year, maybe we could have played with Florida State, but our defense really kind of like this year was let us down that year. But I will say about 14, I think you're dead on. I think the way Ohio State closed the season, and then I think that the way that TCU and Baylor split the vote was the decisive situation in 14, which basically led to the Big 12 having to change things and go to a title game. So, I think those are just largely the 2 major factors, basically, that determined Ohio State getting the 4th spot in 14.
Well, the Big 12 showed absolutely no foresight. Now, this would have been fine back in the days of the bowl games and a vote at the end of the year that, just like in the Big 10 or any other conference, we've got a tie for the championship. Therefore, we're going to leave it at that, co-champions. But the Big 12 should have understood that we now have a playoff scenario, so therefore we have to have a system, implement a system that determines the champion, or else we're going to get left out. And that's exactly what happened. I'm not saying had they determined that Baylor was the champion because they won the head-to-head that they would have been selected, but they just shot themselves in the foot by not determining one champion.
Right. It's kind of like when 2 players split MVP votes on a team kind of situation.
Sure.
I think they kind of divided the vote amongst themselves. It kind of hurt them a little bit. I would say you talked about it in 15. Interesting year. You pointed out the 2 crazy plays that basically decided the playoff that year, which were the block punt and then that crazy play between Arkansas and was it Ole Miss, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's just a shame because Ohio State was so good that year. And conversely, I would say it was 16. And I tend to agree with you about 16, Mark, that you can make the case Penn State deserved it over Ohio State. It's just, I mean, and, Auburn would have proven, but that's the one thing that's never happened in the playoff era, is a 2-loss team has never made the playoff. Now, Auburn would have proven that to be the next year had they had beaten Georgia for the second time and won the SEC title. But, that's just the one area where it seems like the playoff committee's not willing to go down. It's a two-loss conference champion, which basically played out in 16 and 17.
Yeah. Well, it'll happen.
Yeah, I could see him breaking through. Now, Mark, I say this from an Ohio State perspective. I actually think we had a better case, maybe, don't you think, to make the playoff in 18 as compared to 17?
Sure. Yeah.
Just for the simple fact that I know our loss was bad to Purdue, but I would argue we had just as many, if not more, quality victories than Oklahoma. And if you think about it, both teams were the same team that year. Great offenses and kind of bad defenses. Although I would say I don't think our defense was as bad as Oklahoma's was that year. Because correct me if I'm wrong, I think Oklahoma's was like all-time bad in 2018.
Yeah.
So and by the way, I think that they just long and short, I think they got it right in 19. Although do you agree that Alabama was pretty much the fourth best team in the country that year still?
Oh yeah. I've said that many
even
times.
Though they didn't make the playoff. So yeah, well, it's an interesting trip down memory lane as always with Mark Rogers.
Well, thank you, David. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Take care. And have a good evening now. Take care.
All right, let's keep it going here at the Voice of College Football. Yes, when you compare Ohio State and Oklahoma in 2018, Oklahoma had the advantage of being able to avenge its loss, and they did to its credit. They lost to Texas, a really good team that won the Sugar Bowl, and they lost that game but won the Big 12 championship game over Texas, while Ohio State lost to Purdue, did not play Purdue again, played Northwestern in the Big 10 championship game. And Ohio State played more ranked teams. For Oklahoma, they only beat number 12 West Virginia in that crazy 59-56 game against Will Greer, and number 9 Texas in the Big 12 championship game. Ohio State had a string of ranked wins. All right, next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Chris.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
Good. I don't want to stir the pot. I don't like
stir the pot. Come on, Chris, stir the pot.
Okay, well,
that's why I'm here.
I don't like people not liking what I have to say. That's kind of where some people don't. I'm not going to say everybody doesn't, but anyway, well, if that's why you're here, then I guess I'll let you have it. But well, I was just thinking, and you've heard the expression. I'm sure there's more than one way to skin a cat. I think that's what this whole thing boils down to. I mean, sure, I'm sure a playoff, even like maybe, I'm sure somebody could go back in history and maybe even give a percentage of whether, the playoff champion would have been, I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest. I've never tried it. So, but I'm not sure it's a cure-all. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so even if a person doesn't like maybe the way, I'm not necessarily, I say I'm pro BCS. Really what it is I'm pro whatever works, and if it doesn't work, then I'm just like you are. It's like, well, this doesn't work. We need to get rid of it. But if the truth is, and I'm not saying it is the truth, I'm just saying, if the truth is something works, kind of like the expression, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's where I kind of feel like I am on the BCS. I think we can argue about whether the right teams were in the championship game. And there's probably many arguments to be made about that where maybe, like we talked, one of them that was being talked about was, and I don't really, to be honest with you, Mark, I don't follow college football closely enough to understand all the details that go into who goes and who doesn't. And even if I did know it, it wouldn't really probably make sense to me because I'm still on the outside of it. I mean, I just follow the games because I'm interested. I like college football, so I want to see who goes and see the results and make up my own mind about what I think about it. But 2013, I mean, I don't know that anybody else other than Florida State can really claim it. I mean, we can argue about maybe who should have been in the championship game, but I think looking back on it, I mean, you said that Michigan State had some bad calls, but I mean, that's kind of the way life is. I mean, maybe there shouldn't have been those bad calls, and that probably does affect the result. And in that instance, if that were the case, then we'd have Michigan State playing Florida State probably in it. But the reality is, I mean, life isn't necessarily always the way it is we want it. And so I can't say that Florida State didn't win a national championship just because another team, if they'd have been admitted, might have beaten them. I mean, that's kind of that's hypothetical. That's
I
not,
never said that. I'm not taking a
didn't say
national
it. I'm just
championship
telling
away
you.
from Florida State. No, I'm not taking away
No,
a
I know.
national championship from anybody during this decade. My claim is just Auburn was selected to play Florida State. Michigan State had a
Sure.
similar resume than Auburn. I'm not discrediting
Virtually
Florida
identical.
State's national championship. I'm just saying that there was another team that had a similar resume to Auburn.
But it didn't stop at Michigan. I mean, I told you, Louisville, even though, and I know we're getting a little bit closer to, well, yeah, Louisville, but, they're probably not. I understand everything you're going to tell me as far as we're not going to really consider Louisville because they were in the Big East or whatever. I guess it wasn't the Big East, but, but we should consider them because if we're going to be fair, if they have the same record, and I even looked back on you might not use this metric, but I looked back on the proficiency rating, and there really wasn't a big difference between Michigan State and Louisville as far as the rating goes. I mean, they were almost identical. And I'm not sure who was the better one. It doesn't really matter, I guess. But, I mean, you can't really enter one and not the other, so it doesn't really stop at just one game between maybe you'd have to include Louisville and then maybe another team just to make it fair. So it's like I don't really see the benefit, I guess, of, so – and we can give what it is the way I look at it is, is that really such a bad thing for Michigan State to, they had to go to the Rose Bowl. Isn't that a huge punishment? I mean, to me, that's like a reward. I don't understand why anybody really would be like upset about that. We have to go play, we have to go play in the Rose Bowl. Isn't that a shame? Or isn't that, that's the way it should be. I mean, that's great. I think that's the way it ought to be. And they can show that they still, and now we can still talk about how good they were. Whereas a playoff, I don't know, I think it kind of messes things up personally. Sure. I mean, it might lead to one team. It probably does. I mean, we would probably know who the better team was. We wouldn't have to guess about it. But I don't know that we need to know. I mean, let people make up their own minds. And that's maybe that's even the good part about it is we can kind of have these debates about whether Michigan State could have beaten Florida State, and maybe even come to the conclusion that they probably could have. And that doesn't mean that they did it wrong, though. That doesn't mean that they got it wrong. It just means that that's the other way to skin the cat. That's all. 2 ways to skin the cat.
Okay. So
does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. And I'm not saying that Michigan State should not take pride in its season for finishing 13-1 and winning the Rose Bowl and the Big Ten championship. That's a phenomenal accomplishment. I'm just stating that we have a system where there's a playoff, and in the previous iteration, a BCS championship game that determines the champion. And I personally don't like knowing that there were teams that had just as good a resumes and sometimes better resumes that were left out of. The reason these guys are playing, generally, there are several, but is to play their very best, win the games, and then for us to determine what is the best system to determine who the champion is, who the legitimate champion is. And in my opinion, the BCS did not do that, did not accomplish that. And the playoff system's done a much better job, but there are still questions concerning the playoff because it's not inclusive to all the conferences. So that's the only issue. The issue is determining a champion. We're not discrediting the Rose Bowl and the prestige of the Rose Bowl, but there's a championship format. And in this case, Michigan State was left out. Now, had Michigan State been selected, I would be making the same claim about Auburn. So it's not a Michigan State thing. It's we didn't have enough places. We didn't have enough spots to include all the worthy teams that should have been playing toward determining a champion.
Well, maybe, I mean, this is just my opinion, by the way. Maybe another way to look at it, because remember how it was, they did kind of what was it, kind of a piggyback? I mean, there'd be like the Rose Bowl, and then there'd be the piggyback. I think that season, the piggyback was the national. So there were 2 games actually held in Pasadena that year.
Yes.
So it was the Rose Bowl, and then well, again, to me, that's like getting buy one, get one free. I mean, you You don't have to buy the cow if you get the milk for free. I just don't understand the idea between, okay, so not everybody's going to go to basically what it boils down to. Not everybody's going to get to play for a national championship.
Well, of course not everybody's going to go
to
play for the national championship. But how would you feel if you were a competitor and you believed that you were playing on the best team in the country, or you would like to have that challenge to determine whether you could show that you earned a national championship, but you didn't get that opportunity, even though your team had the same qualifications as another team?
I don't know. I've never been in that situation, so I mean, I can't really answer that. But
and by the way, Louisville's schedule in 2013 was horrible. It was atrocious, and that's one of the reasons why, even though they finished 12-1, they were number 15 in the country. They didn't even play a ranked team in their bowl game.
I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing it out there that there was more than one team that had a, you know.
Yeah, you're right.
Not saying that Louisville deserved it.
You're right. They were 12-1, but yeah, they played in the American Conference.
That's why.
Yeah, they played in the American Conference, and they played a bunch of Temple and FIU and Rutgers and South Florida and UConn and Houston, and Memphis, and even Miami. They played in the bowl game, was not even a top 25 team.
Not as good. No, I understand where you're coming from. I don't disagree with you. I just think my position's based on what I remember about the BCS, which is, I think we got a better. I don't know. This is just from my perception, you know, and you know, you can weigh that against what you think of me, but you know, it wasn't. I don't think it's like you say though. I don't think it was just like one game settled there. I mean, there were, you know, anybody that thought that Michigan State was. I mean, there was another way to. I mean, it's not like the BCS had the final say over everything. I mean, it did over most, but you know, there was kind of like in 2003, AP went with USC. I mean, and I don't know if it was the right thing for them to do or not. I don't think it was. I think actually my opinion is LSU was the national champion. And that's not just because I like the BCS. I tend to think that the better team was LSU, but that's just my opinion. But, and then another year, I think you said was bad or whatever. Maybe you didn't. 2001, where it was Miami, Florida against, who was it? Miami, Florida against Nebraska.
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, that wasn't probably the smartest thing that they could have done, but you know, they made adjustments to the BCS to where that wasn't going to happen again. I mean, everybody after that happened.
But it did happen again. That's the problem. It did happen again.
Well, not like that though. I mean,
well, 2 years later, Oklahoma lost a Big 12 championship game by 4 touchdowns. And still went to the national championship game. Chris, can I make one statement just to clarify something about the Louisville situation in 2013? The reason I discard Louisville is for the obvious, the schedule. But the reason I include, if you saw some of my graphics as I was going through the years, that I include, let's say, UCF and Cincinnati in recent years was those teams went undefeated. So even though their schedules were marginal compared to the other teams, the Alabamas and Ohio States of the world, they at least won all their games to then make a claim to say, nobody has beaten us. We deserve an opportunity. So that's the only distinction I'll make versus what Louisville did in 2013.
Actually, I think in that season, though, I think even though it was the American Athletic Conference, I think that was the last year they still had in other words, the conference champion was, there's an automatic bid that was awarded to Central Florida. That's why they were in the Fiesta Bowl that year. Remember? I mean,
yes.
I know what you're saying. I mean, that went away. That went away the next year, but the last year of, I guess it was the BCS. That's why Central Florida got to play Baylor in the Fiesta Bowl. Was the American Athletic Conference had the automatic bid that was awarded to them.
Absolutely.
They retained it. They didn't lose it until the CFP came along, and then they were put into the group of 5. You know, and I just, you know, maybe I'm too sentimental to pass. You know, I'm kind of that way as a person, I guess. But I like the BCS. Or maybe I'm the only one in the world that does. You know, that's very possible. But
there's a few out there.
You know, I thought it. I didn't say it was perfect. You know, I think Auburn playing Florida State I think that's great personally, but
Oh,
I don't
it
know
was
why
a
I'm so
great
alone on it,
game.
though.
It was a great game.
I don't think there's like a consolation to play in the Rose Bowl. I think that if you win go to the Rose Bowl and win the Rose Bowl, I don't think that's like a consolation prize.
Well, actually, Chris,
that's like that should be.
I understand what you're saying. The Rose Bowl is amazing. It's historic and it's not a consolation, but just by definition, it's exactly what you're stating it to be. It is a consolation. If you didn't make the BCS championship game, then you had to default to play in your conference champions bowl game, which was the Rose Bowl. So by very definition, it was a consolation game for Michigan State.
Okay. But, one thing, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, and I'm not trying to tell you, I remember, for example, I've already talked about it, so I'm kind of like a broken record, but in 2011, and I know this is, like I say, this is just me just throwing stuff out there, but, Houston, nobody ever talked about Houston, which is fine. I don't think they weren't rated that high, but if they'd have beaten Southern Mississippi, they would have been 13-0. They would have been in the BCS. No, they wouldn't have been in the national championship game. I understand that. But they would have been, there's in other words, there's incentive to go, like you're talking about undefeated. There was a built-in incentive for a team like Houston, or it doesn't have to be Houston, but in that season, Conference USA is what I'm talking about.
Well, Chris, just hear this. I'm sorry, but just listen to the statement that you just made. If they would have beaten Southern Miss, we're talking about national championships, and you're saying if they would have beaten Southern Miss. Well, it's one thing to say if they would have beaten Clemson, or if they would have beaten Oklahoma, if they would have beaten Southern Miss. Okay, we're taking this to a ridiculous place.
Well, I don't know. I'm just Larry Fedora, who's the coach, but
Southern if Houston would have beaten Southern Miss, and the topic is national championships. Southern Miss got in the way of a national championship.
No, well, I said it would have been if they could have beaten that team, they would have probably most likely would have been in. You never know until it actually happens, right? But I was under the impression that if they'd have beaten Southern Mississippi, they would have been 13-0. Case Keenum, they would have been somewhere in the BCS. They wouldn't most likely not against the champions, but not necessarily. That would have been determined. And then most likely not, but they would have been in the BCS somewhere. And that's kind of the games that I think that we all kind of wanted to see. I mean, maybe I'm alone. They ended up playing Penn State, and I think Penn State was 7-5. And I actually beat Penn State, by the way. I don't know if that really matters, but they beat them in some other game. And so, I mean, yeah, it would have been, they would have had to they lost us, Southern Mississippi was over 10 years was 8-2 against Houston. I mean, they'd owned Houston. And so Houston knew that was going to be a tough opponent. So Houston knew they had to beat Southern Mississippi to advance. I mean, I think that's a good thing. I think that's what made, we don't know because they lost, but Kevin Sumlin, he wasn't there. They had some other guy, kind of a temporary, because Kevin Sumlin had already committed to go to Texas A&M.
True.
So they were, I'm not going to say they were shorthanded, Mark. They really weren't shorthanded, but they didn't have their coach. But, they got walloped. So the Mississippi walloped them. I mean, it doesn't really matter. They got beat pretty bad. But, yeah, I think had they beaten Southern Mississippi, there's a pretty good chance. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but there's a good chance they'd have been in the BCS. And I think that's what made the BCS cool, because then we could have seen them play a good team and maybe get walloped. I don't know. But, I like the BCS. And then the way it ended up happening, obviously, was
the portion that you're stating about the BCS, though, is no different than what we have now with the New Year's Six. So you're clumping the BCS series, the number of bowl games, into we're talking about the national championship game. That's what the conversation is here. I'm not saying that you can't bring up other factors, but of what you're stating about what you like about the BCS, we still have with the New Year's Six.
Some of it, yeah. Some of it. Not all of it, but yeah, some of it. I think the standard was higher, and just as my opinion, by the way, I could be wrong on some of this. I think the standard was actually higher with the BCS. Like I say, the only way Houston would have been in the BCS is if they'd gone 13-0, and they didn't. So, I mean, as soon as they lost the game, they were gone. That was it. And I don't think anybody, I think that year, they didn't open the door for another group of 5 team. That opened the door for another good team, So I think, I think what the BCS did was, it didn't make it easier. It made it actually, I don't know what it did really. It made it to where a team could advance. a team like Houston or a team, or like in 1998. I know Tulane wasn't in the BCS because the BCS didn't have as many, but these possibly Tulane might have been in a. They went to the Liberty Bowl. You know, Liberty Bowl was kind of a pseudo, without actually being in the BCS, was kind of a pseudo BCS game because, like in 2004, it paired Louisville and Boise State together, and those were teams that were really good that weren't in the BCS. So it's like we could say the Liberty Bowl kind of doubled. It didn't really. I mean, that's kind of me just being me. But, you know, the Liberty Bowl was able to take Tulane. And so we got that, and, you know, played BYU. BYU was like 7-4 that year. They weren't that great. But they beat BYU really good. And so, yeah, I think the BCS works fine. That's just my opinion. I don't think it was perfect, but I think it worked pretty well. I think it was a good way to put teams together.
I will agree with you on this point that the BCS was fine in formulating matchups in other bowl games, but that can be done by anyone. You're and I'm not saying this is incorrect or you're wrong, but you are taking the BCS in its totality, which is fine. We are focused on, in this conversation, the BCS championship game and the flaws involving the championship game. You're looking at it in its entirety. And yes, it created all sorts of great bowl matchups, but those were created before the BCS and after the BCS. We don't need the BCS to create good bowl matchups. All right, Chris, I need to move on to these other calls, but I appreciate call back anytime. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
All right. Before we get to our next call, I appreciate all these super chats coming in. Thank you so much for that. So first of all, we've got Neil saying, I still think the FCS has a better system sticking up for the little guys. Here is some gas money, Mark. Thank you so much for that. Obviously buys a lot less gas than it did here about a year ago. But Neil, thank you so much for the contribution. It is so much appreciated. I hope you know that. The FCS does have a system of selecting the playoffs, and I got to plead ignorance here. I don't know what it is. I know it results in, at one point, 16 teams. Now, are we up to 24? It's 24, right? Seems like a lot of teams in a playoff, but 24 teams, I believe now. It used to be, it's been 16 for a long, long time. I don't know how those teams are determined, whether that's a poll or a committee, or they actually have a playoff system, maybe, that objectively selects the teams. That would be something. All right. Next here, before we take this next call, I want to make sure we acknowledge and honor these super chats. Let me get there. Kyle, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you. Yes. Kyle, I got some new glasses thanks to all of you out there. So Kyle says, nice to see that you finally got some new glasses. Yes, the old ones are still here. Somebody thought I got them fixed. No, these are actually new. Those are the old ones that have absolutely no. Let's see if how much they changed my prescription. It changed, but not much at all. What I actually got were those blended bifocals. So it's slightly blurry when I do that, but it works out well. I'm getting used to them. And the doctor suggested them, and I said, yeah, we'll give them a shot. So they're very, very minor, slight, again, blended bifocals. And I'm sure everyone really wanted to know that. But thank you so much for Kyle for that super chat contribution. We've missed you. So thank you so much for being here, and good to see you. Next up, hang on just a second. Next phone caller. Let me get to these other super chats I would like to recognize, of course. Kyle coming back. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Mark Rogers, I'd donate more, but the IRS is getting suspicious. Well, I got to say, Kyle, we were at the start of our Miami live stream tonight, and I took a phone call from my tax person and had to put off the Miami live stream that the Wholesome one got started because, you know, it's that time and a lot of questions have to be answered and things filed correctly. And now that I'm doing this thing, oh my word, then it becomes, yes, difficult. It used to be so clean and nice and easy when you just got your W-2 from your employer. But hey, I chose to do this. Neil, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Nevada football, for not producing any Nevada football content. That's extremely nice of you. So, Neil, thank you for that. Because Kyle is awesome. Go Wolfpack. All right. Let's see if there's anything else on the board. I believe there is. Kyle coming back. Appreciate you being here. We should do away with the committee. Amen. Bring back a CPU, quote, with better algorithms. Remove the human error. Expand to 10-team playoff with first week buys for 1 and 2. Problem solved. All right, Kyle, I thank you so much for the super chat, but we don't want any buys. Kyle, do me a favor. Go to 2019 and determine which 2 teams should have received buys. Because that's a huge advantage. The buy is a huge advantage. DeAndre, appreciate you being here, man. What is good, Mark? What is good with you, DeAndre? Appreciate you being here for the college football conversation tonight here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you for that super chat as well. And Neil coming back. Bandwagon Kyle for Mark. But let's go, Mark. Neil, appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for the super chat. And again, I had mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that if our focus, or I'm losing my mind, it's past midnight, right? I've been doing this. I've been talking since 6 p.m. That if this gets good response, meaning there's interest in this series that we've started here, I will go back through the rest of the decades. So this being the case, we'll do the 2000s, 2000 through 2009, look at the national championship races and what the controversies were and who got ripped off and who was maybe falsely elevated, if so. So, Neil, thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. All right, let's get back to the calls. And let's make these the final 2. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hello? Anybody? Going once? Going twice? Hello? You're on the line? Do you hear me? I guess not. All right. Now we only have 1 caller on the line, but I will take 2 more calls if somebody else wants to call in. All right. Who's up next here at the Voice of College Football?
Hey, Mark, it's George. The people in the chat asked me to call in and ask you if this is a world record night for $100 donations.
I believe it is, but we can certainly try to break it tomorrow night.
Exactly. Lemansky asked me to ask that. If we could just once a year, I don't know how to do this. If everybody would just send you $5 once a year, you have 35, 50, how many? 35,000?
Well, if we count all the channels, we're pushing 100,000. I got to keep a track of that because I got to add them all together. We'll have a big party when it's 100,000 on all the channels.
I'm just thinking, even if we didn't say once a month, if we just said once a year, we got $1 once a month, something.
As long as it wasn't going through YouTube.
See, that's the problem. I've never, ever had money not get to somebody in the mail. I wrap it in a piece of paper and I put the money in there. I've never once not had them get the money. And I'm 61 years old. I've never had someone say I didn't get it. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Just don't put it in don't put it in like a Christmas envelope or a birthday card envelope. Just a regular piece of mail. You follow me? Nobody knows. The post office might know. They run it through a scanner, but the machine ain't going to steal it. And the mailman can't tell there's a $5 or $10 or I just sent someone 70. They sent me a note today. Said, thank you. I got it. You know,
There you go. You're old school, George.
I am old school. Kyle just did another 100 because I called in. I love that dude.
And
I think I'm going to take Kyle for vice president.
Kyle, well, you already dumped a real MVP. You already dumped him.
I don't think MVP wanted to do it, and they were saying maybe you. And I said, Mark wants to be the ambassador to the South Pacific Islands. I know you want a motel room service, lay on the beach. I'm not going to put you in the middle of this shit.
Yeah, it is a mess, isn't it? For as much as I would like to,
base will be Hawaii.
for as much as I would like to try to help dig us out of all this crap that's going on in this country, yes.
Mark, I know how to fix it in one day. You can write executive orders now, right? My first executive order is going to say we're rolling back all the laws to whatever they were in 1960, and there's no such thing as a victimless crime.
1960. Yeah. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's over. All the bureaucracy, you're fired. Go home. I'm going to give everyone that works for the government a tent and a hoe and a rake. And I'm going to say, good luck. Let me know how this shit works out for you. Bye.
That is phenomenal.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh my God, Neil Campbell. This is dueling banjos. Neil Campbell just gave 100. It says, because George, and listen, I'm 61. I'm not going to get a big head over this shit. I never cared in the first place. I'm just being myself. I have a good sense of humor. I was never abused. I understand people are abused and they're, but I wasn't. I got lucky. All my uncles and aunts and relatives and cousins, they're all just nice people. And I came out in the real world and I'm like, what the fuck? Are you serious? People live like this? I'm going to give everyone that has a kid $100,000 right off the bat to take the pressure off. And for 18 years, they don't have to pay their electric or water bill. I'll take care of it. And I'm going to take your IOUs as money. Ever since they took us off the gold standard, an IOU is cash. That's all banks have in their vaults is your IOUs. You know that, right? Every promissory note, everything you sign, the signatures, the money. There ain't no such thing as money. The Constitution says only gold and silver can be used as money. Have you seen any gold and silver being used as money since you were born? No. That was the trade-off. That's what they gave us. We can sign that's why your electric bill has a check at the bottom that you tear off. You're supposed to flip it over, sign the back, and send it back to them. It's a check. You see that. It says, please remit. Remit doesn't say pay. It says remit. I could go into this all day.
George,
I would love to teach America how much.
I apologize. I apologize for not
works.
checking out your YouTube channel. I know you've got a YouTube channel. Do you go on political rants on your YouTube channel? Because that's what you should be doing.
I should, Mark. Like I said, I pretend I'm an extrovert, but I'm really an introvert. There was absolutely nothing on my YouTube channel except me washing my car and painting a living room. Isn't that hilarious? I mean, I know what I'm doing. If I even tried or got close, I would just probably disappear. Listen, if the creator of the heavens and the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that's in them wants me to be president, I'll be president. I ain't got it. It doesn't take my effort in addition to that.
In honor of you and Kyle,
majority.
In honor of you and Kyle, I've placed the Florida and Florida State helmets front and center. And unfortunately, Neil, based on your contributions, I should be running out getting a Nevada Wolfpack helmet. That's what I should do.
Oh my God, exploring with Ben and Sam just gave $3. And don't think that doesn't matter, Ben and Sam.
Absolutely.
It's like that story of the widow.
Yes.
Exactly. It's like the story of the widow that drew in 2 pennies into the treasury. And Jesus said she's done more than all them other dudes. They were rich anyway. That was her last 2 cents.
George, you know that story. Good for you. Wow. George teaching us from the Bible.
I know everything because we have the mind of Christ.
Did everybody else?
That's what it says.
I want to make sure that everybody caught that story. So there's a little old lady at the temple back in Jesus's day who gave, I forget what the term was back, but basically 2 pennies. We'll just say 2 pennies. And she was kind of looked down upon because she gave 2 pennies while there were all these rich, like from the Sanhedrin. I can't think of
the Sanhedrin. Like
the Sanhedrin and the I can't think of the other term for the highfalutin Jewish rulers. I can't think of their name. That Jesus called them hypocrites all the time. Anyway, that they looked down on her, and then Jesus pointed out that she had given more than anybody else, and they were like, "What?" And he said, "Because she gave out of her need. She doesn't have anything left. She gave all that she had." Yes, tremendous story.
Yep. So thank you, Exploring with Ben and Sam.
Yes, absolutely. And for anybody,
and listen, that takes
go ahead,
that
George.
takes nothing away from Neil. It takes nothing away from Neil and Kyle. I love big spenders. You know, sometimes you can do it, and sometimes you can't. And God bless people that can. You know.
And God bless everybody who's not donated anything, because if you like the video, if you comment as you are in the live chat, that helps. If you can go out and share the videos on social media, share them on Facebook or on Twitter, talk about us on Instagram, whatever it is, those are all contributing factors that allow me to get more views, and then YouTube pays more money, and so forth and so on. So all of those are contributing. Cheryl's in here all the time to Real MVP, you, George Labansky, Felipe Garcia. I don't want to shortchange anybody and not mention them, so you guys understand I can't call out everybody's name, but I appreciate it. Uncle Rico. So Exploring with Ben, yes, thank you so much for that. And Uncle Rico's in here too. Uncle Rico, I think, was earlier complaining about, I don't know what he was complaining about, but it was rather funny because I know he's my guy and he's here for me, but he didn't seem to be too happy with the whatever I was saying. I wish I could go back and pull those comments because they were pretty funny. But he's backing your presidential campaign, George.
Hey, MVP 24 said there's a Wolfpack helmet in your P.O. box. Uncle Rico just gave $49.99. Tim Franklin just gave $20. Have you seen those?
Yes, I put the Uncle Rico on the screen because he put George for president. That's what I was saying. He's backing your presidential campaign.
These guys are awesome. When we started talking years ago, it's all just fun and games, but this has really become fun. I like it that people like me. You know, everyone likes to be liked. And maybe someday even Pizza Woman will admit she likes me. I don't know.
Yeah, she obviously is a big crush, and Pizza Woman is still here in the chat. And our
maybe
guy Tim,
I will do something that will change her mind. Hey, listen, I in my whole life, I've only owned 2 internet domains. This is at the very beginning of the internet. I've never had a credit card. To this day, I'm 61 years old. I've never had a credit card, and I've never used credit. I always pay cash. Isn't that insane?
That is
Can you
insane.
believe that? Yeah. I mean, I can't rent a car. I'm afraid to try to get on an airplane without a credit card. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what world am I living in? Mark, my dad told me a man should be known by his character and what he does and who he is. And he said, all that matters anymore is your credit rating. What a bunch of bullshit. That's not what makes you a good man or a bad man. But they turn the world into that, you know? That's nasty. You can be the biggest freak, nasty person in the world, but you got a black card and you're a good guy. All of a sudden, like, give me a break. What a weird way to do business.
And now you're still in cash, and most of there's a huge segment of the population out there that's thinking they're going to have to be strictly in crypto here pretty soon, and that's going to be a whole other issue in this country.
Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, Mark. Y'all better write me in. I had 2 domains. One was called badvote.com, and the other one was called the $5 Party. And I said, if you'll send $5, I'll never take a penny of the money. It's for all of us. And every week it's $5 to vote. We don't need someone to get on a horse and ride to Washington, D.C. to represent us anymore. We have these things called cell phones. We can vote ourselves. Why do I want some jackass that's been in Congress voting for me when I can do it myself on my cell phone? And they took my shit down. I went and looked for my domains one day, and they were both owned by the Vatican. The Vatican.
Oh my goodness.
They own Bad Vote now. That's horrifying. When I woke up, I said, you know what? I think maybe I won't do that no more. I think I'll just stay alive a little bit longer.
Do you see what
they can kiss my ass, you know?
Do you see what Felipe Garcia says here? His comment is, this has been the best college football and informative of life show I have ever heard in my life. So George, I deliver the college football.
I'm actually reading the chat. I'm reading the chat and I saw that.
And you bring in the look at society, and I guess it's a good combination.
I was just born at the right time, June 27th, 1960. I just got fitted in there just the right time to see this all unfold. I've been watching this. I'm 61 now, and I feel like I'm like 16, mentally. I'm down with it all, but I'm like, what the hell?
So, George, since you're keeping track of the chat as well, do you see some kind of attack on Cheryl? Do we have some bad comments coming in here?
It happens every once in a while, but it's never over the top. And she can defend herself. She has a wrench. Hey, Kyle Pickett said, so George has no credit other than his word, which is more than me. But that's what the story was about. I was about to say about never having a credit card. I was estranged from my last wife, and I went to her, and we were living apart. And I said, please, I beg of you, I want to buy these domains. And she's like, what? And she gave me her credit card, and I went to wherever you buy the damn domains. This is like 20 years ago. It's real famous. Back then, there was only one or two places to get them. But I purchased them, and I have the paperwork to prove it. I have the original papers they sent me that said, you own this domain and that domain. I couldn't believe it.
So
16 mentally, Lemansky. He said George just admitted to being 16. Which is the opposite of 61. But yeah, mentally and physically, I'm just saying, I feel young. I never get sick, Mark. This whole coronavirus shit that's going on. When I go to the grocery store, I smoke roll your owns, right? So they're always kind of wet. They're always kind of wet on the tip, these American Spirit Organic roll your own cigarettes. And I always lay them on the pillar or throw them on the ground. And when I come out, I pick them up and I light them again. And I have money. I don't need to do that, right? But it's just to show that, like, to witness the creation. I ain't worried about shit because I know I never get sick. Sickness isn't what people think it is. Don't be a hypochondriac. Don't be afraid. Live right. Trust in God. Now, do you think you really got to be afraid of a germ or a virus? That, Mark, no one's ever proven such a thing as a germ or a virus exists. It's called germ theory, virus theory. There's court cases people have went to prove such a thing as a virus exists, and no one's ever proven it. It's all like, oh yeah, I got this electron microscope and it can see Mars and it says there is. Like, bullshit. It's a way to sell pharmaceuticals and poison people. The word pharmakia in the Bible means sorcery. Like, why are we doing sorcery with our health? Pharmakia, pharmacy, pretty close. Gotta admit.
All right, I want to clear up a few things here. So I feel bad about this because I have no idea what he's talking about. So, George, for as long as you've been watching me, I'm not going to say that I've never missed a super chat, but I've never intentionally ever missed a super chat, because if anything, I want to be the person on here that is the most grateful. I want to express that I can't imagine anybody being more grateful and appreciative of super chats. But Buyer's Vacational Rentals is stating, I used to donate paid comments, which I remember. He says all the time, and they started to get skipped over. I would see others' paid comments get posted, but mine would not. Hence why I no longer donate to this channel. Well, buyers, I don't want you to donate if you don't feel comfortable doing that. Don't want to, but I have never intentionally bypassed anybody's super chat contributions, let alone yours, but certainly no one's. Ferris, George, wants your opinion or recommendation on a brand name paint. Is there a brand name of paint that you endorse over the others?
Listen, this is a tough one. My kid normally uses Sherwin-Williams just because he's been with them for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
But sometimes we use other brands. I mean, it really depends. It gets so specific. Like even each paint brand has different levels of paint. So I just can't. I can't answer that as a blanket question.
Gotcha.
However,
yeah,
on the Sherwin-Williams stickers they get him to put on his vans, on the can of paint it says SWP, Sherwin-Williams Paints, right? And I told my kid, I said, well, what is that? And he said, that means Sherwin-Williams Paint. And I said, are you crazy? I said, in prison, all the white gangs have SWP tattooed on their back. It means Supreme White Power. I said, you better fucking cover that shit up in the wrong neighborhood. Isn't that hilarious? They put SWP on our cans. Like, come on, man. Either write your whole name in there or just take it off completely, put a rainbow or something, you know?
George, I'm going to ask you.
You can't be careful enough.
I'm going to ask you one other question, and then we got to move on to these other calls coming in. But maybe you are the right tonic to have on to boost the revenue for the channel. But anyway, Robin is asking that I ask you about Coach Coop.
I actually know Coach Coop. I subscribe to his channel, and I don't go there that often. He's a Miami guy. He attended the Slav Olympics with Uncle Lou and Pigskin Pete this year. He's cool, dude. You could use him sometime on the Miami channel. People would love that shit.
I know Coach Coop. He's been on once or twice, but okay. I thought that there might be some reason why Robin wanted to get you fired up or something about Coach Coop.
Yeah. I don't know why he brought it up, but yeah, I absolutely affirm the guy and sanction him.
And Tim, thank you.
Listen, guys, listen to me. Listen to me. If I'm elected president, if you write me in, everybody go outside every night at 7 o'clock just to see there's other people like you out there that support me, and blow your horn for like 30 seconds at 7 p.m. And if you keep doing it, pretty soon you'll notice the whole United States of America is blowing her horn, and you'll know we can safely write George in and he will be elected, because you have already heard it. I think it's in Revelation about the fifth horn blows or something, you know? Blow your fucking horn. I was going to do that with Bad Boat and the $5 Party, so we all know we're here. You know, there's a shitload of us. We're not alone. We're not outnumbered.
George, as always, it's good to hear from you. You know that. Thanks for calling back.
Hey,
appreciate that.
Last thing.
Yes, one last thing.
One last thing. If I'm elected president, every taxpayer is going to receive a 45 and M16 in the mail with 1,000 rounds of ammunition. Nobody's robbing anybody anymore. It's over. Fuck the cops. Break into my house. I dare you. I'm going to save everybody simultaneously.
Thanks,
and
George.
No one's going into McDonald's robbing them. No one's shooting up a school, because everybody's going to be armed.
Yes.
Okay,
thanks, George.
I solved that problem real quick.
Thanks, George.
Love you guys.
Good night.
Bye.
All right. Yes, Jeff, we will talk college football if the last two callers want to talk about college football. Welcome to the show. What's up?
Yeah, Mark is, how you doing?
I am doing well. Who am I talking to?
Well, my name's Jacob. I called a long time ago.
Yeah.
I haven't called a while.
Okay.
I just wanted to, I did want to talk about some college football. Before I talked about it, I just wanted to say that, I don't know what anyone's going through, but I know Jesus Christ cares, and he came to save the world. And if anyone's going through a tough time, he came to defeat sin, and those who put their faith and trust in him will never die. And everything that's going on with the world, and I know it's really hard, and he's helped me out through a lot, and I just wanted to be bold and say that, but I am nothing without him. And I also wanted to talk about college football also, just a little bit.
Well, thank you for that message. We appreciate it.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask. I guess I wanted to ask about. Do you remember when Michigan State? I think it was a year that they beat Ohio State. I think it was maybe the year after that, but Oklahoma. Yeah, Oklahoma went with Michigan State that year, and well, I guess I was always thinking that I thought that
2015.
2015. Yeah, 2015.
Yep.
I thought that Ohio State, based off what they did a few years later, and I'm not just, maybe I am biased, but it's just if they took Alabama, like when there was one loss, especially, I don't know about 14, but a few years later after 15, I kind of think 16 they maybe shouldn't have went, but 15 I think they should have went in 15. I just don't know what you think. I always believed in that, but because you go down and you look at everything and the numbers and stuff, and based on what they did years after that, how Alabama or certain other teams got in with one loss, it just, I don't know. I think they should have got in, but I was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, I think that most people that know football and can evaluate football know that Ohio State might have had the best team in the country and certainly had one of the 4 best teams in the country. They just won the national championship. They hardly lost anybody off that team. They brought everyone back. They won 10 consecutive games. They didn't look impressive. And of course, they had a quarterback battle between Cardell Jones and JT Barrett that maybe Urban Meyer could have handled better. And then, of course, they got tripped up against Michigan State. And Michigan State lost to a 5-7 Nebraska team. They needed a miracle to beat Michigan. And Ohio State was the best team in the Big Ten and one of the best teams in the country. And I believe everyone that evaluates football is on board with that. The problem is that Michigan State won the division, won the Big Ten championship. They beat Ohio State head-to-head. So the evaluation of the talent wasn't close, and Ohio State was a better team. However, Michigan State won the games that had to be won. So Ohio State, while being one of the best teams, did not earn a playoff spot.
Yeah. I just kind of think that, like, I was seeing things like Oklahoma and Alabama would get in at certain times. Seemed to be some bias there. And I think probably, I guess the one team that probably earned it the most, honestly, I can't even think of anyone. So I guess I'll just say Ohio State in 14 maybe, but I'd say maybe Florida State in 13. I don't know. And one last thing, and then I'll let you go. This NIL thing, I kind of think that, honestly, I kind of think that money's kind of affecting some things, but it's not so much money as it is like people's hearts. But I just wanted to bring up that I think that's kind of why everything's kind of in people's eyes are kind of getting off of. I don't know. I may be over pushing there, but I guess, I know I was talking about earlier, but I was wondering, I mean, do you think that they're losing sight of what really matters but really, I guess, I don't know, they look at it a way to pay education, and I don't know. It seems kind of like it's not a good, like, kind of teaching,
Yeah.
children
So to answer your question,
Good.
sir,
yeah,
we have colleges and universities in this country and around the world to educate people, for them to go to school, to be educated in a number of ways: math, science, English, etc. Okay. At some point, there were athletic teams that were formed just for recreational purposes, intramural purposes. Obviously, in football, it started to become popular and more popular and more popular and more popular, and started to draw crowds. And once there is popularity, there is an ability to make money. So then it is exploded throughout the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and on through the last few decades to massive proportions in which millions and billions of dollars can be earned by the schools and by the television networks and everyone involved. Well, we came to a place where it was recognized that all this money was being made because of the popularity of this sport. However, no money was being made, at least above the table, by the student athletes. So why can't we allow them to earn, just like any other American, earn money for their work? And in this case, more so for their celebrity. It's not so much for their work. They're being paid based on their celebrity status by outside companies. So this is
yeah.
this is the problem, is we've gotten the education and the athletics completely flipped, but there is no going back. So we have basically turned this into professional sports.
Yeah, I guess that's where I don't get, like, honestly, fairness, that's all good. I guess my thing is, that's the thing, it seems like if you're going to do it, that's fine, but it pretty much defeats the purpose, and it's not college anymore. If they like want to do that, that's okay, but it just kind of seems like there's NFL for a reason, and then there's college for a reason. So I guess my thinking behind it always was, if you're going to do that, why call it college football?
Yes, that all makes sense in theory and originally, but the college football is making massive amounts of money. So anyway,
Yeah.
thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, let's take these two calls and we will wrap it up for the night. We appreciate everybody being here, and the crowd is dwindling. So I think we've about hit the end of the line, and I've been going at it for 6.5 hours. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
It's J-Dub calling in from Iowa. How are we doing tonight, Mark?
Hey, J-Dub.
And well, I'm trying to clear my head of the fog of the last half hour of the show here.
Well,
and trying to remember that college football was all that we're going to talk about. If you discussed it in the first hour of your show, I apologize because I missed the first hour. I wondered what your thoughts were on the warning shot fired across the bow by Nick Saban in his interview with the Associated Press today, his comments on NIL.
Well, I got to say, with everything I was doing all day, I was not aware of Nick Saban's comments concerning NIL. So I'll have to look those up and track those down.
Yeah, he more or less came out and said, what you've got now is you've got players who are looking at the transfer portal thinking, maybe I can leave where I'm at to go somewhere else so I can get more money, that you're turning college football into a free agency market now, that it's leaked into recruiting. He said he didn't have a problem with players earning money, but more or less intimated that there's got to be some kind of regulation here. He has said earlier in the week that he would like to see some way in which some of the money is equally distributed amongst the team. He's worried that you're going to start having locker rooms where the right guard and the nose guard and the free safety is looking at the wide receiver and the quarterback and going, where the hell's my money? To paraphrase what he's saying. And I just think when Saban says stuff like that, Saban talked about the transfer portal and said, look, if this is what you want to do, if this is where you want to go, okay. And now look at Alabama. They've got 3 of the top 10 in the 247 sports transfer portals this year. They're about to land a kid from Louisville to give them 4 of the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
He said in 2014, he was complaining about offenses and said, is this what we want to do? We want to do it where we can't get the defense off the field. You want to run these hurry up offenses. You want to do these crazy attack offenses, and your linemen are 3 yards downfield when you throw the ball. Is this where we want to go? Okay. Well, now look at what he's done since then. He's got a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, a Heisman Trophy winning wide receiver. And the last 2 years, Alabama's ran more offensive plays than any school in the nation. Now he's saying, you want to do this NIL? It's not going to be fair, but okay, unless you do something. When he starts talking stuff like that, I really think that he's saying to college football, I don't like where we're going. Everybody. He's not just talking about Alabama. He's talking about the entire spectrum of college football. But then he's saying, if these are going to be the parameters that you're setting up, guess who's going to get really good at it? Guess who's going to come out on top?
Sure sounds like
and
it.
I think,
yeah,
and I think when the GOAT talks, we should listen.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, I'm not in any way making this out to be a simple situation, because it's not. It's a complex situation, but there are pretty reasonable restrictions and limitations that could be placed on this that at least, and again, I don't pretend to be a lawyer or anything that could figure all this out myself, but, I've offered up proposals for limitations and restrictions that could at least be some kind of framework that the smart people then could figure out whether they would work or not, or how they could be tweaked. It's just out of control that, first of all, you stick with a one transfer rule. So that's one limitation right there, right out of the gate, is that these players can run all over the place one time and then boom, you're done. No more transferring.
Right.
So that's one right there. In terms of the jealousy within the locker room, I think everybody's thought of that at some point. Yeah, if the quarterback's making $1 million and the left tackle protecting him makes $50,000, well, then he's not going to be too happy about that. But these NFL teams and all professional teams deal with that, and it doesn't seem to.
Right.
We don't hear about there being issues, and they not only have a situation where there is differences in pay, but many times, as you well know, because of the way contracts are structured, or players get better or worse, there are many times, worse players making more money than guys that are better on the same team. And it's pretty clear who's better, but because of the circumstances, it didn't work out that way. And you would think that would cause all sorts of issues.
Yeah, I obviously don't have the answer. If I did, I'd be the one making all the money. I don't have a problem with the players making money, nor do I have a problem with the one-time transfer rule. I just think that there are unique things about college football, and I don't like it when anything comes in and messes with, what makes it unique. Now, the money is everywhere. It was only a matter of time, I suppose, before the money started spilling into all, every single possible aspect. I wish, I'm an old fuddy-duddy. I wish we'd go back to the days where you had to play 4 years and you couldn't leave after the third. you know, but we're never going to see that again.
Well,
but there has to be some kind of, before it gets completely out of control, because there's money everywhere. I mean, I live in Iowa, and Iowa State and Iowa doesn't have the alumni base that Notre Dame does, that Texas A&M does, whatever. But if you think that there aren't guys there that can make, get $20,000 for doing a sub, a local sub sandwich store or car dealership or whatever, there's money out there for all these kids. What I'd like to hear you think, I'd like to hear your thoughts, Mark. This has really bothered me for a while now, and I know you've touched on it in the past. We hear about Jamal Gibbs goes to Bama, JT Daniels goes to West Virginia, Charlie Brown goes to USC, all the big names in the transfer portal. How about the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids that have made a bad decision? They've entered the transfer portal, and now they're just out there twisting in the wind. When are we going to hear about the negative side of the transfer portal? When is that going to start making kids think, you know what, maybe I should just kind of stay where I'm at?
Well, I think it's similar, and that's a good point, J-Dub, but I think it's similar to when there was a rash of unprepared college football players that were opting for the NFL draft that overestimated them. One of the reasons these guys are as good as what they're doing is that they've got big egos, and plus their egos have been fed their whole life, so they all overestimate themselves. So,
right.
I go back to a conversation I had with Mississippi State's basketball coach when I used to cover Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama in the SEC, and his team was in the locker room. We were standing out on the practice floor. We're just having a conversation. Richard Williams, the Mississippi State basketball coach, and they had just been to the Final Four the year before. And he told me, because he had 2 first-round selections, he said, because all these guys played with 2 first-round draft picks, he said, do you know how many players in that locker room think that they're going to play in the NBA? He said, almost all of them. And he said, do you know how many will play in the NBA? He said, none. He said, there might be one guy plays in Europe. He goes, they all overestimate themselves. And I think that's just by and large. They're athletes, they're young kids. They think too much of themselves. So what happened was that we had this rash of, once you could leave after your either redshirt sophomore season or junior season and go to the NFL, well, what happened? All these guys thought that they were great, and they got undrafted, or they got drafted in the 6th round and cut, and they weren't prepared to play in the NFL. Well, that went on for a time, and then there started to be some education there. Much of it was provided by the NFL to say, we will supply college football players with a scouting report and with a draft evaluation to let you know, no, you are not a top 30 pick in the NFL. You're a off the board, undrafted free agent status. And so I think the same thing could happen here, where somebody starts to, we're still kind of early in the process, but we're probably getting to a point where there can be some accumulation of information to be communicated to educate these players to say, this is the probability. There's been 2,000 players in the transfer portal, and 74% of them did not get a roster spot on another team. And even out of those, certain amount percentage never played it down, and a certain amount of percentage never started, and could accumulate all those numbers to educate these players.
Yeah, I just hate, I'm thinking about, the 2-star, the no-star. I mean, those are the kids that I'm not worried about the Jamison Williams and the stars. They're going to, I'm just thinking of the vast majority. The 3% are going to see an NFL contract.
Yep.
And most of those are going to last 3 years. And then what? So that's what I'm thinking of. I mean, you know, Saban has said, you know, to go back to him, his approach is if his juniors are looking at going into the NFL, if they get a card back that says they're going to be a first rounder or a second rounder, then he says, I tell them to go. I mean, even though it's going to hurt my team, don't miss that chance. If you got a first round card, you know, we enjoyed having you in Tuscaloosa. Good luck in the, you know. But there's all sorts of people that are out there, you know, thinking, boy, you know, and then it comes out, you know, and if they do hear their name, it's with the 183rd pick in the NFL, you know, and that's if they do hear their name called, you know, and it's those guys that I worry about. It's the guys way down the draft that leave early. It's the transfer guys that transferred and then they don't end up anywhere, and then what, you know. There goes their chance at an education. There goes their, you know. I'm not a guy that likes a big heavy hand regulating things, but it would sure be nice if there was some kind of control and some kind of guidelines. And maybe we'll get there because we're still early in the game with this NIL. Yep. Maybe we'll get there. I hope we get there soon.
Absolutely. I do as well, J-Dub, because it's a slippery slope. Hey. And I want these guys to be able to be regular American citizens, and we can all benefit from working and celebrity and all that other business. So they should be no different, but it's getting out of control. All right, J-Dub, thanks for the call.
Just wanted to pass on to you and everybody in the chat that's listening. Have a blessed Easter weekend. And if you're not fortunate enough to send in $5, hit that thumbs up and tell people about Mark's show. He does a great job. We're all here because of Mark. So pass on the word, and thanks for taking my call, Mark.
Thanks, J-Dub. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And to J-Dub's point, yeah, there are so many ways you can contribute. So if you enjoy what we do here, even if you don't agree with me, if you enjoy the conversation with everyone in the chat and the focus on college football, then exactly, there's a lot of ways to contribute. Last call of the night. How about that? Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? What's up, Mark? It's DeAndre.
DeAndre, good to hear from you, man.
It's always great to hear from you, Mark. So I'll keep it short. First off, I keep telling everybody talk about NIL, and I'm glad the last caller said that he's not into regulation. I think we need to let go of this trying to control what's going on. The market is going to set itself eventually. You know, everybody's upset. You know my story. My uncle went to Clemson, and, you know, under Danny Ford, everybody know Clemson was cheating at that time, even when they won their national championship. A lot of money was passed their hands. It's well known. But look how a lot of these guys came from low income families or very poor. I forgot the name of the player for Texas A&M. He was talking about how he slept on he felt guilty that his family was sleeping on a dirt floor while he was at Texas A&M sleeping in a bed, and he never went back to college. What happened if NIL was around at that time, and he could have helped put his family in a better situation? Because like y'all said, only 3% of these people are going to make the NFL. And as you well know, in the 80s and 90s, they still, the 70s too, NFL players really wasn't making that money up to what Reggie White in 92 or Deion Sanders around that time. They really wasn't making that much money.
Sure.
I mean, more money than what we have, but,
yeah,
you know, we got to look at this stuff for what it is. People have been getting rich off of these athletes who happen, majority of them be African Americans. They've been getting rich off of that. And now, to me, some people feel like they're upset because they see not just young black people getting money, but it's people getting money. Like Quentin Ewers hasn't thrown a pass in the college football. We don't know what he could do. And what he got, $3 million out of Ohio State, and now went to Texas and about to make a whole lot more money. And we don't even know if this guy could play. This is because he was the number one composite player. But that's what the market says it's set for.
Mm-hmm.
And we should, you know, people say all so concerned about these players. Well, what about the players that never make it to college and who play all through junior high, high school, going to camps and stuff, and they never made it to anything? Are we concerned about them? We need to just say we're upset because we're losing our best player because he didn't get the best NIL deal. I know that's not for everybody, but I really don't think it's that much concern for the player. I just think people are getting upset over their team losing a player. I mean, that's what I really think it is. I mean, like, I don't get me wrong, the kid at Georgia Tech, and he was a beast, but Alabama's a better situation for him. I'm not saying education-wise, but Alabama has a better chance to get him as a running back. I need to get him where he needs to be because Georgia Tech, I hate to say this, is not a very good team at this time. Alabama's a better situation for him. So I think you made a good business decision. And we all are free to move. You're over the age of 18. You can go fight a war. Why can't you be free to move and do what you want to do? Why can't you make millions of dollars? Does anybody complain about what was that game called? The guy made like $10 million off of World of Warcraft or some type of video game. He was only like 16 years old. I can't remember the name of the game, but nobody sits around and complain about how much money he just made, or child actors and stuff like that. And people need to get out of people's pockets and let them do what they're gonna do. And this is just football, and people been making money all the way back to when Chris Webber and all of them other guys are playing UNLV. I mean, come on, man. We need to get off of this. Oh, they shouldn't be making the type of money.
Well, for anybody who doesn't,
if Nebraska, go ahead. I'm sorry.
For anyone who doesn't want these players to make money or any professional athletes to make money, then don't support it, because the quickest way, and I'll take it to the professional level, would be, we just almost had a Major League Baseball strike. So what would determine that Major League Baseball players no longer make the amount of money that they do now? Well, if next season
we don't watch the game,
yeah, nobody watches the games, nobody goes to the games. That ends it right there.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. And I'm gonna let you go, but I got two more questions for you. One is for all my Clemson fans. Leave DJ alone. That offensive line is developing. He didn't have all his receivers. I'm getting tired of everybody saying, well, we should go ahead and put this other guy in. Clemson was all receivers and offensive line was beat up all last year. Georgia got a pick six, running back for a touchdown. 10-3. And I know Georgia fans can come back and say, hey, well, we didn't start Daniel started that game, I can't remember the quarterback that played in the championship. But, I mean, Clemson held their own against Georgia. So, I mean, I'm tired of, everybody jumping on Clemson and on DJ mainly. We haven't really gave this guy a chance to see what he can really do. He had a good game against Notre Dame and Boston College, but also I have been telling Clemson fans this ever since LSU game. We don't have any different types of receivers. This is the first year where we're going to have multiple different types of receivers that can do something. So I said, let's give this guy a chance. And let's give this guy a chance and let's see what he can do with his offensive line. Because that running attack, they got three good running backs. So when they run the three running backs, when they got these three running backs, they're going to do pretty good on the passing game because it's going to open up downfield. It's going to open up the ball downfield for the receivers. So let's give this guy a chance to see what he can do this year. Maybe this new offensive coordinator, he might do Streeter. Maybe he saw some mistakes that the guy from that went up to Virginia has been made. The next thing, I don't mind Miami football, but they already started the hype machine. I listened to one person talk about, oh, look how easy our schedule is this year. Georgia Tech and Duke. I'm like, dude, like the last couple of years, y'all struggle to beat those teams. Like the hype machine for Miami, like every year is like off the chain. I've never seen a program that gets so much hype like Miami, and they haven't done that in a very, very long time. I can understand the hype machine for Ohio State, Alabama, but Clemson at times, Southern Cal. But, I mean, come on, man. They haven't did that in a very, very long time. I know people say, well, what Southern Cal does? And I said, I can understand that, but what has Miami done in recent years? I mean, they also Louisiana Tech 14-0 at a bowl a couple of years ago. But they already starting this hype machine like they ain't going to lose to nobody. And they going to wipe the floor with everybody. I mean, you just lost to a Florida State team. And don't get me wrong, I know Clemson beat them by 10 points, and that was kind of a late touchdown, which helped us get the spread. But I was like, man, you know, like the hype machine for Miami football has already got started, man. And we ain't even kicked off the season yet. I don't even know what their schedule look like. I just heard them blasting Georgia Tech and Duke and how much they suck. And I'm like, what have y'all done? Y'all were losing to these teams 2 years ago. And y'all barely beat them last year. I think they blew out Duke, but they usually struggle with Duke. I think Duke had like a 3-year winning streak versus Miami before last year. I'm like, come on, man. But I'm going to let you go and get some rest. And we have time to take my comments offline, but I know you've been on for a minute.
I appreciate it, DeAndre. Thanks for calling in tonight. Appreciate the contributions too, sir.
I know, always, Mark, man. Hey, man, and everybody, I think we talked about this before. Everybody needs to give Mark $2. And I see some guys throwing up $100, and everybody can't afford to give $100. But you know, you got a good following of 1,000 people, and what's that? 2,000 will get you what, about maybe $2,000 a day. Everybody should be throwing up $2 a day at Mark just to shut the man out. You know, I mean, I know you ain't broken to anything, but still, you know, we need to help you out a little bit because you give us the you with this other guy, I can't think of his name right now. Y'all put the content on TV. I mean on YouTube, and you know, especially football season, y'all need to go subscribe to Patreon. Because Patreon helped me win a lot of money this year. I can do the gambling, but hey, y'all go ahead and put it out there. But thanks, Mark.
I appreciate that, DeAndre. You have a good night, man. Call back
Mark.
anytime.
All right, Mark.
It's our guy, DeAndre. We have some great college football discussions with DeAndre. Go back to the 80s and 90s. Always bring up some great debates there. But tonight, I just let him roll with it. And thanks for everyone being here. Our next show is West Virginia Live at 8 Eastern Time on Friday. And in addition to that, I don't know if I'm going to do a call-in show tomorrow or not, but we do have the West Virginia guys coming on here at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So we'll see all of you then. And I'm going to start schedule previews, and then quarterback ratings are coming your way as well. Appreciate everybody being here. And again, if you guys like this discussion, reviewing national championship seasons from each decade, we did the 2010 through 2021 decade. I know that takes us into the next decade, but you get the idea. We will do another live stream here soon and call-in show with 2000 through 09. Right here at the Voice of College Football. Everybody, you guys were amazing tonight. Thank you so much for everything. It was so much fun, and I've been on here since 6, so that's 7 hours in the books live. So appreciate you being here, and we will catch you Friday, 8 Eastern, West Virginia Live.